So welcome. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And I want to welcome Mike Switzer and Ashley Miller, who are joining us for the first part of our meeting. So we'll start with a moment of reflection. Okay, and I will now read the Indigenous acknowledgement. We begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18, Region of 1818, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wyandot peoples. We have no members of the public present. I want to start with approving the agenda with a slight tweak. We're going to bring item G1, the auditor's report, draft audited financial statements, up to the beginning of the meeting. And so with that motion, may I have a mover?
Can I ask for something else? The Craig Leith Working Group.
Okay.
I do a report on that. I'm not sure, where is it in the action plan? Does it show up under community hubs or? Look at you because I know you.
Yeah, I know. You think I have it memorized.
Oh,
It's empowering services. I think we have
Okay,
increasing participation in community advocacy.
okay, yeah, so maybe I'll do there.
So wait, so we're going to add a discussion
Just
Your
verbal
update,
update.
and we're doing it under the action plan, or are we doing it under?
I just asked for it shows up in the action plans. I think that's one of the reasons I'm sitting on that group.
Right. So Joanne, you think it's under,
Yeah, it's under empowering services, which just isn't listed on our. So if we maybe.
it is, it's on page 4. That's item, F4.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
So we could have, we'll add update on Craig Leith Working Group. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So with those two, changes, may I have a mover? Okay, Lori, seconded by Chris, all in favor? Okay. All right, so that the agenda of May 15th be approved.
That's clear.
Is carried. Sorry. Thank you. I'm still learning. Maybe I'll just get the declaration of pecuniary interest out of the way. Is there any declaration? No, none. Okay. All right, so we will go over to Ashley and Mike.
Okay. So, do this, and I will pull up the slides. Can you see the slides, Ashley?
Yeah, perfect. So do you
Okay.
want me to just let you know next slide when I'm ready?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Great, thank you. So we have completed the audit for the Blue Mountains Public Library Board, and I'm just going to run through a quick summary of our findings. Next slide. So I'm the manager on the engagement, and Brendan Hall is the partner who is not able to be here today, but has been actively involved in the file. Next slide. Next slide. This slide is just summarizing the audit highlights that we're going to be discussing in the presentation. We will review the status of the file, materiality, risks, misstatements, control deficiencies, and any other policies. Just a summary, so we'll walk through each of these in detail as we go through the presentation. Next slide. This is a slide summarizing the status of the file. So as at June 5th, 2025, which is the date that we had prepared this report, we have completed the audit with the exception of the remaining procedures on the slide. We need to complete our discussions with the board, which we are doing now, obtain the approval of the financials, receive the signed management rep letter, and inquire about any subsequent events with management. So this should be completed today or tomorrow within the next day or two, and then we'll be able to issue the final financial statements. Next slide. And next slide. So materiality has been set at 32,000, which is the same as last year. We have it based off of total expenses, which remains relatively consistent year over year. In the graph here, you can see that total expenses are 2.6% of materiality. Other relevant metrics that we look at would be total assets and total revenues. Total assets at 3.9% and total revenues at 2.5%. And those are all within our reasonable range. Our audit misstatement posting threshold is set at 1,600. Again, the same as last year. And it's the threshold used to accumulate misstatements identified during the audit. Next slide.
Can I just ask a question about?
For sure.
So is that materiality similar for organizations of our size?
Yeah. So we do set it on benchmarks. So our typical benchmarks would be expenses, assets, or revenue. Most like municipalities or libraries or public like sector, we do have it based on revenue or expenses. And so of a similar size of you, it would have similar materiality. It's all based on the amount that you have on your financial statements. And we set it just to kind of determine a range that users of the financial statements would care if there's an error, they would change their decisions based on an error.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I will discuss some of the significant risks and results in our audit. So first off, management override of controls is always a significant risk for every audit we do. We recognize that management is in a unique position to be able to manipulate accounting records and override controls. Although this risk will vary based on the organization, the risk is still present. So because of this risk, we have performed journal entry testing to ensure that there is appropriate business rationale for all entries. And throughout the audit, we didn't identify any specific additional risks or any issues within the procedure. Next slide.
I'm sorry, this is just, again, a clarification. So management in our world is our CEO or the town, who is considered management?
Anyone that can really like record entries within the financial statements.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if there's a lower level employee that can record entries, if it's doesn't need to be approved by anyone higher up, then they wouldn't really count as management, but it's essentially anyone that can kind of record entries or approve entries without kind of the oversight. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you.
And next slide. So another significant risk is fraudulent revenue recognition. It is a presumed risk, so we are required to address it. Our auditing standards require us to assume that there are pressures and incentives on management to inappropriately recognize revenue, and this can happen through revenue cutoff or manual journal entries or any other adjustments related to revenue recognition. However, we have rebutted the risk based on the nature of revenues received by the library, which does not present any incentives, opportunities, or rationalizations to commit fraud. There's no targets or bonuses connected to the quantity of revenue each year, and it's mostly obtained through grants, so it is appropriate for us to rebut it. Next slide. So now I'm going to go through just some other risks of material misstatement. So grant revenues, a significant portion of the library's revenues come from grants and can fluctuate significantly year over year. So because of this, we have performed sampling over grant revenues and reviewed the associated documents for a sample of transactions during the year. For the sample selected, we have verified that they have been recorded appropriately, and we didn't note any issues in these procedures. Related party transactions, we have confirmed all significant related party balances, which would just be with the town, to ensure that they were complete and accurate. And again, no issues noted in the procedure. Next slide. So this slide just discusses control deficiencies. We did note one misstatement, which I'll discuss in the appendix. And whenever there's a misstatement, we do always have some sort of control deficiency. However, we're only required to report to you significant deficiencies, in which we have none, so nothing to report here. Next slide.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said there was a deficiency, but
yeah, so there was a misstatement, which we'll go over kind of at the end of the presentation. However, because there was a misstatement, we always say there's a control deficiency. In that case, it would just be like review of entries or review of accounts or reconciliations. But this slide, we're saying there's no significant deficiency. So a significant deficiency would be something that would impact multiple accounts, meaning that we can't rely on them. So we're not required to, we're only required to report to significant ones. And in this case, we don't have any significant ones. Next slide. Yeah. So accounting policies, nothing to note here. No significant changes in accounting policies or practices.
I wanted to ask, in the statements, there's a comment that the budget adopted by the board was not prepared on the basis consistent with that used to report actual results. We prepared it on a modified. So my question was, have we rectified that so you don't have to?
Actually, if it's okay, I can certainly speak to that. So the library is similar to the town budgets on a cash basis. So you're looking at cash inflows, cash outflows.
Okay.
The financial statements, as with the town financial statements, have been prepared under PSAP accounting or public sector accounting standards.
Okay.
And under those standards, it's accrual basis.
Oh.
And there's transactions that take place in the statements. You'll note on the statement of operations, amortization. We don't typically budget for amortization.
Right.
So that is what that is speaking to, is the difference between how the library budgets versus how the statements have been prepared. So it's not to say that the budgeting is wrong or needs to be rectified in any way. It's just highlighting that there's a difference in how we budget versus how the statements have been prepared. And actually, if you have anything.
But does that mean we're supposed to have the matching or not?
No. And what the note in the financial statements does is kind of take you through the entries that exist in the statements that don't exist in your budgeting. So again, it kind of reconciles the two.
Okay.
Okay. So it's not that we were doing something inappropriately. We're doing it the way the town does it, but when the auditors come, they have to reflect it on the full accrual.
And not even the audit. We prepare our accounting records following full accrual. Again, it's just on, we wouldn't budget following full accrual again, because we're not going to necessarily budget for something like amortization. There's other items in the town statements, for instance, that like our reserve and reserve fund transfers, we budget for those, but they don't show up in your statement of operations here because
it's irrelevant.
Not that it's irrelevant, but it just doesn't fit into what we're reporting on the statement of operations. So again, I'd be happy to share with the board. We've got a report that actually summarizes quite nicely the differences between the two, just for information purposes. But that's what that note is speaking to, is just those nuances between financial reporting and how municipalities in general. I worked at the town of Collingwood previously. We budgeted the exact same way. We had a similar note disclosure in the financial statements.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful at some point to sit down and talk about municipal budgeting, and because we ask a lot of questions over and over again.
Yeah, well, I think it's true.
Yeah.
Some of those nuances probably for us to understand.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. Next slide. So again, just other financial reporting matters. No issues to highlight. Everything is correct. Next slide. And again, this is a slide summarizing any other specific topics. Nothing to note, no disagreement with parties, no additional related parties, or any illegal acts that we had noted. Next slide. So this slide just reviews our independence and confirms that we are independent with the Town of Blue Mountains Library Board. We do complete other audits with the Town of Blue Mountains, but we do have appropriate independence. Next slide. And then this is just reviewing some appendix for your review. I won't review them all, but I would like to go down to page 39, if we could, just to review the misstatement. So this is a summary of our uncorrected audit misstatements. Throughout the audit, we just noted one misstatement that relates to donations that were recorded in the incorrect year. So there were 2 donations that amounted to $5,250 that had donation receipts and checks with December 2023 dates. Because of that, these donations should have been recorded in 2023. Again, it's only $5,000. It's above our audit misstatement posting threshold, so we have recorded it here, but it's not significant at all. And no other issues were found in our audit other than this one. So that concludes our presentation. A clean audit report will be issued, and we appreciate just the assistance from management in concluding this audit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have the same one about the budget, so that's been covered.
Okay, all right.
If I may, I'd just
Yes.
like to thank Ashley and Brendan and her team for their hard work in helping us get this across the finish line.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley and Brendan. All right.
So you have a couple motions you probably have to deal with before she can leave.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So, the motion is that the board approve the draft 2024 audited financial statements of the BMPL. And should we do this as the same motion or a separate motion that we approve the audited firm for the auditor firm for 2025? Is that a separate?
I don't think it matters, yeah.
Okay, so we'll include it then. So, can I have a mover? All right, Chris, seconded by Joanne. All in favor? Okay, great. All right, that is carried.
Right.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, Ashley.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, it would be great if we, had to sit down at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and again, I can coordinate with Jennifer on any
Yeah.
requests that you have. We're happy to,
Yeah.
share the information and any questions you have.
Do you want to just repeat for the rest of the members when we were talking earlier, but all the various accounts and what the town is doing?
Yeah, no, just on the reserves and reserve funds. So Monica, the treasurer and the director of corporate financial services at the town, we're going to be doing kind of a deep dive into the existing reserves and reserve funds, and where applicable and where it makes sense, consolidating a lot of those, and then drafting policy around specifically on reserves and reserve funds, setting target balances. And then that will kind of drive policy on, surplus allocations to make sure that what we have set aside in reserves and reserve funds is sufficient based on our assessment of what those funds are used for. So as part of that, I would feel that the library's reserves and reserve funds would be included in that assessment.
Mhm.
And it's just to sort of streamline and drive kind of, if we have a surplus, where that money is allocated, and to ensure, again, we have sufficient funds set aside for the purposes that the reserves and reserve funds have been set up for.
Mhm.
So in the 2024, the town, the budget that was just presented,
Yeah.
that talked about all the reserves, are the library reserves and surpluses and surpluses included in there? Do you know?
They would be consolidated.
So they're all in there,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
But again, I provide to Jennifer, and we can pull reports more or less
Yeah.
of like the specific library reserve. I believe they're rolled up in the financial statements for the town.
Mhm.
But we can give you the detail of what's sitting in each kind. The one thing I will note is generally, and this is consistent with my past, is we don't book kind of real-time reserve transfers. Generally, that's something that we make at the end of the year, because that's when we know kind of here's where everything is settled. So if there's items that need to be funded by a reserve or reserve fund, we would fund at that point in time, so that would reduce your reserve or reserve fund balance. And in the case of the library in 2024, you had a surplus, so that went into the reserve at the end of the year, so that would have increased your reserve balance.
And sorry, have you asked for the summary of the library reserves at this point, or are you? Just.
I'll have that for Q2.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah, I think
Great, yeah.
you requested it.
Yeah.
You've just been kind of.
Yeah, well, no, that's why I'm just more, I'm being fair, so okay, when, you know, like, wasn't it a decent, time, yeah, because obviously we need to understand
Absolutely.
the full picture of what we're working with or not. Yeah.
So recognizing it's a new team, at the town in terms of the finance, are you also looking at the budgeting process?
We've changed the budgeting process quite a bit already, so we're actually we've had our preliminary meetings for the 2026 budget. We'll have, and we're using a new tool to sort of collect budgeting information. So yeah, we're definitely changing, I think, the approach that has perhaps been done in the past.
Yeah, the only reason I raise it is because, and it's a good problem to have, but we really weren't expecting a surplus in 2024. We were expecting a deficit. So my sort of brain goes to, how are we budgeting? Because we've had surpluses for a couple of years. And some of that we were expecting, but we were intending to use those surpluses to fund an expected operating deficit, which didn't occur.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it won't occur this year, but I feel like, things aren't quite.
Yeah, so what I could do is I could work with Jennifer.
Yeah.
We've just completed building a variance analysis tool and model. So we've just brought forward our Q1 2025 variance analysis for the town as a whole. The library is included in summary in that report. So I could work with Jennifer and provide a breakdown on the 2024 actual versus budget, so you can see specifically where that surplus took place and how it kind of came to be. And then we are doing regular quarterly reporting, again, looking at everything and then down to departmental divisional levels, which will allow us to we won't be able to forecast now because it's too early. But we're anticipating for our Q3 variance analysis that we'll actually be able to forecast where we expect.
Oh, that's great.
Things to be at the end of the year. So the library is included in that analysis, and I can work with Jennifer on getting that information shared with you so you can assess that information.
So you have a business intelligence tool, is that?
I've built something.
So to its limits.
That's great. Well, we're very appreciative that you joined the town. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Oh,
a
yes.
question? Because I was reading about the budget timeline email. that
I
you sent
do,
out.
yeah, and I have a verbal update on here, but I guess while Mike's here, if there's any.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
It's a very different process than we've been involved in, because we have a funding agreement with the town for
Yeah.
the 6%. And so since we've had that agreement in place, we've not had to produce anything like this for the town. So I'm just wondering, I think there's some good things about that. I'm really concerned about the whole funding agreement and how it matches up with that.
Yeah, it's a great question.
I'm not sure I'm the best to speak to that,
I can, so I will say that it's not working the exact same for the library as all other departments. But that, I think the goal, even when I was speaking with the treasurer, was to have the library, more included in the actual budget book. So, what I've been working on recently is filling out a division sheet, which sort of tells our story and would be included like every other department of the town. Acknowledging that we have the agreement, that would still be in the budget book, acknowledging that we are separate, but just making sure that it's, I guess, more accessible to the public and that the story is told in the same way of how our funding is benefiting the community. I found too with the division sheet, there's a section that I think will actually be helpful when I'm presenting the budget to the board and also when we're putting together our annual work plan for next year. And so there's a section that actually encourages you to talk about specific financial, I guess, milestones within each quarter of next year. And I can go into more detail too, but that's the main difference. I don't think there'll be much of a difference in terms of, how the budget's presented to the board. It'll just be more so how our budget's reflected in the overall budget book. Is kind of my understanding.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly, again, right, if you look at the 2025 budget book for the town, there's one line item for the library. I think what we're looking to do is kind of include the library, not to say that there's any change to the funding agreement that's in place, but just to include and tell the library story, where the funds are being spent that comes to that 6% levy, so to speak.
Yeah, I just think it's important when you write it up that it's very clear that,
Yes.
you know, the council really can't at that point say, oh, we don't think you should be doing that, so let's cut out the cert desk. You know, something like that, because that, you know, so it's a good information document, and I think it's a good way for us to present to council what we're doing and how important it is. So I have no objection with it. I just want to make sure they understand that they can't say, okay, in that case, that's gone.
It's for information, I think.
Yes.
My brain went there too. One other thing I will mention too, though, is I think it might actually be a really good tool to help educate both council and the public on our I don't know, the word separateness, that's not even a word, but you know,
Autonomy.
even autonomy, yes, thank you. And because there's, you know, the section for must-haves and things like educating on legislative requirements, I think that'll be a good opportunity for us to really showcase that.
Yeah.
But also to tell a very positive story about how
And
we're
we're
spending.
spending full enterprises on a very small budget.
No, I think there's a lot of good in it. That was
Yeah.
my only concern. So-
Yeah.
No, thanks for bringing that up. Okay,
Great.
well, we appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Good luck with the grant.
Good luck, yes, don't be late.
459. Step down.
All right, so we will go back up to, reports to be received as information. So may I have a mover, Joanne, and a seconder, Chris, that the action plan status, the space utilization study, the annual policy review, piano policy, proposed strategic planning process, and CEO service update be received? All in favor? Carried. I got it. All right, previous minutes. So I was not here, so I cannot vote on these minutes.
I need to pull it up on the
Do we
screen.
have quorum?
Yep.
And I think there was, Laura, you'd made a change.
Yeah, small changes to be clear that, but a comment I made at the
Yes.
Quigley's working with me, it sounded like the whole group had a nice discussion about libraries and it.
I did incorporate that change, and then I think that I addressed
Yeah.
all
yeah,
of
some
your
yeah,
comments
good
too,
comments.
Joanne.
All right. So we need a mover. Chris, and a seconder, Joanne.
There's so many of them.
All in favor? Okay, that is carried. Three people is enough?
You have four, because you vote.
No, I can't vote.
Yes, you vote every time.
You can.
No, but I can't vote on when I wasn't at the meeting.
Yes, you can.
Oh, can I? Oh, well, then I vote yes. That makes it great. I have always been under the impression that if you couldn't participate in approving the minutes if you weren't there.
And I think if you read them and understood them.
All right, that's good. Okay, enough said. We have no business arising. There's that peculiar line item when we do things. We have no deputations. We've received no public input on the agenda. We do have one letter from Tim Hendry, an invitation, or he's suggested attending, or we've suggested that he attend July 17th, and to do a focus group on strategic planning. We don't need a motion for that. I don't know if there's any comments or questions.
So when you're talking about strategic planning, are you talking about our plan?
No,
Or about
The
tax?
towns, yeah.
The town's
So
plan.
this will be an input session. I've actually attended one when I was with, that I worked with.
Yeah.
And so it'll be an input session and discussion. If we're deciding to put it on the agenda, I think we should be aware of the time that it may take up if we have, depending on other items. That's my own.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so similar to the
How long
conversation
were
we had.
you?
We had about half an hour.
Okay,
And again, whether we use it, whether we feel that we can align on key things we want them to think about, you know, it is really what's the library's perspective on the corporate strategic plan and priorities. It really is all about priority setting for the next, the document will be for the next 3 years. What they're trying to do is align on vision and priorities for the town and council now, and then to overlap into the next council. You know, there will be longer term thinking, but essentially that's what it is. So I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just making us aware that it may take.
so I'm just conscious that the MRFA presentation is tentatively scheduled for the day before. And I'm not sure how we would be able to provide
Immediate thinking on if it was included.
if in fact it does go ahead, or whether we even need to have that, because I'm thinking we want to talk about, when we talk about the town's planning, we want to reference at some point,
With the MRFA, even if the joint council meeting happens the day before, it's only being received as information. There's
Okay.
no decisions are being made. And I imagine that when it goes back to council, should that meeting happen, it won't happen until the fall. Council will be on break for the summer.
Oh, so just council will see it, will hear it. We won't have access to it.
No, you
Oh, we
will.
will.
And we have requested, I guess I'm kind of getting into my verbal update. That's okay. But we have requested to have the document available earlier than the first initial meeting, because it is a comprehensive final report. The board it'll be a public report. Everyone will have access to it. But the format of the meeting will be, should either library board have any questions at that particular meeting, it'll be filtered through the council rep on our boards. So we can prepare questions, and then Councillor McKinley would ask those questions like formally in the meeting.
So Joanne, when you did the focus group, was it structured or is it open-ended and we submit comments?
Yeah, it's pretty open-ended.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, essentially it is literally just they're meeting as many stakeholders as they can to understand what the different groups, you know, perspectives and sort of what's working, what isn't working, and what do we see council priorities really should be in the next, you know, focused on the next 3 years. So, yeah, so if we want to, and again, I'm just trying to think of process, you know, if we want to have that conversation open, or if it should be, you know, maybe we share some emails on thoughts. And, if you take the, it's out there now, the corporate survey is out there for all residents to take.
yeah,
So I did it this morning. It only takes a few minutes, but to go through to get an idea of what they're asking, the kinds of things they're asking, similar questions they're asking. Groups like Delaware's, I think Craig Leeds Working Group will do it, the DMRA will have a meeting with them. Yeah, so we can decide that, yes, let's include it in the meeting, and maybe we give it 15 minutes or half an hour, but I'm just trying to think of how we get.
How do we prepare for that?
Yeah, we prepare.
If we're meeting as a focus group, we're representing the library.
Yes.
Not individual.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I'm trying to think, how to process wise.
and didn't we do that? Well, we did that for the MRFA, yeah, we met and we had a document.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at the survey, so I don't really know the kind of questions they're asking.
Yeah,
But, you know, we probably need to have our messages
Yeah, clear,
sorted out.
yeah. Okay, so, I mean, I would, it seems how they're closing the survey for individuals July 7th. I think it is important that we meet them in July. So maybe we can have a quick,
I think we had like a half-hour session with all of us before
yeah,
the board meeting. Something like that.
yeah.
On the 17th?
Or maybe we could prepare something by email and send it out ahead of time, like some ideas of things we want to say. What do you think, Jen?
We could do something collaborative on SharePoint.
Mm-hmm. Why don't we try to do that
Um,
and then meet half an hour ahead? No?
Me and computers.
Okay,
if we do, meet, whether or not it's before the regularly scheduled board meeting, I still have to advertise that a special meeting is taking place. And it technically is a public meeting, not to say it has to be recorded or live streamed, but,
we didn't do that for the preparation for the MRFA, did we? Before we met the consultants, we prepared,
I don't think it was an official meeting with all of the board. Now I can't even remember.
yeah,
And yeah, I don't think we did have an official meeting with all of the board. Because if every board member is there, then it's a board meeting.
well, then why don't, I maybe take the leadership of doing something by email and then.
So are you looking to collate some comments?
Yeah.
from all of us that will be
Yeah.
our standardized or
Yeah,
our message to the town staff.
Maybe
Regarding
structured around the key questions, I guess,
Yeah.
in the survey and saying, yes,
Yeah.
our position on
yeah,
what it was,
question
yes.
one,
The question, yeah.
yeah, so I can take.
I can create something in
Oh, could you?
SharePoint
Okay,
and I can send out an email with the link and
That's how we
then,
did it last time with the Mercer. We had the key
Yeah.
messages, the key questions, and then someone did kind of a key message from us, and then we all commented on it.
right,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
so you'll do that?
similar, yeah,
Okay.
Have you received anything from the consultants for the meeting?
I'm gonna go
for the,
Which,
which meeting, the July, the 10th?
Or, yeah, I know it'll be with Tim, sorry,
Oh.
anyway, there are a group of questions, so I think Tim can probably send us here the questions.
Yes, I haven't been sent anything. I'm sure as soon as I confirm, he'll probably
Yeah.
okay,
send me what I
Yeah.
need. Okay, so I'm just making note of this.
Yeah.
Because they sent us the questions ahead of time, so we had a chance
Yeah.
to think about it and.
Exactly.
right, because we had asked the consultants for the MRFA to send us the questions, and then that's what we
Coming
did.
back
So
to me
let's,
now too.
yeah, let's have a similar process, thank you, Jen, and so we'll review that, and then we can, once we're in our meeting, maybe if we had the first 15 minutes just to review where we're at, and then invite them in, and that can be publicized.
Okay,
Okay, great.
I would just touch on it before the meeting.
so I will confirm with Tim that the board accepts the in-person focus group for July 17th and then
Maybe say 1:30?
1:30.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, so action plan. Now, I have to say, I think this is coming along nicely, very nicely. Thanks, Joanne and Jen for all the work. Oh, where is it?
I don't have a ton of updates from the last meeting, although I can confirm that I've started the charitable status application. I think I'm about halfway through. It's more work than I thought it would be. But yeah, the whole process of getting onto the account, then into the account, then I had to register for an RR number, which really wasn't that complicated, but we got that, and then yes, I now have access to the application. They don't open that piece in the online portal until you have this RR number, which I thought we already had, but we didn't. But the good news is that yes, I'm about halfway through that application, and then I may reach out to the treasurer. I have a couple of questions and she might be able to help me instead of having to reach back out to a lawyer. I think Sabrina had been working with a lawyer in Owen Sound for some of the pieces. So, but so far I'm making it through without that,
So
so.
you've made more progress
We're doing
in 6 months than we have in 3 years, so good for you. That's great.
The other,
Just on that topic.
Yep.
I know the intention had been that, 'cause we use it charitable status of the town to issue receipts now. And the thought was that we only use this new number when it had to do with grants, and they would continue issuing stuff for us, so, is that the still thing? Are you aware of that, and is that still what you think?
I haven't talked that through with the treasurer yet. It's the receipts themselves aren't a lot of work to do. Like I did them when I was in Grey Highlands. It's the charitable tax return every June. And so I used to do that in Grey Highlands.
Really?
But yes, and, but the treasurer had mentioned that at a former employer, I think it was the auditor actually did it for the library. So I think there's different ways of doing it, but I haven't really thought that through just yet.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Are you thinking that we might change that?
Sure,
Yeah, it's just figuring out what's
Whatever wants to
easiest.
fit in,
Yeah.
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 Excellent.
And I think apart from that, our social return on investment, when in the May newsletter that was mailed, I think it was May, that was mailed out to, all residents. Initially, it was going to go out in February newsletter, but it got bumped to May, but we still had a feature in the February. Anyway, after this went out, I have had a few residents reach out to ask questions, about the study. And another local not-for-profit had reached out to see whether or not they could actually modify the toolkit and use it. Because there are some similarities between the two organizations. OLS has received that question before. The answer is no. The copyright for the toolkit, OLS owns it, and it was tailored very specifically to public libraries. But needless to say, it actually, I think, has drawn a little more attention to the study, which is good. And that was council's recommendation to include it after we had presented it back in October. So that went out.
So was the response positive from those that you had questions?
I would think so. One was general interest, so and I had followed up with the full report that had come to the board as well, and a link to the presentation to council. So they haven't reached back out with any questions just yet, but I imagine I might hear back. But I definitely think that we got a really positive response from council about the study. And when I presented the annual report, they commented on that briefly as well.
So there's no highlights in a couple of the rows. Is that because they're in the other the full quarterly report?
I thought so. And I wasn't, actually, I guess I could clarify too with the board. Is the expectation that should be filled every meeting with?
It does
A
seem
bit
like
of an
there's some
update.
redundancies, like you. I think we're almost maybe not quite there in terms of reporting, because I don't want you to have to put the same thing in 6 places.
Right.
And I noticed your your service report, is that what we
Yeah.
call it? Is kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, so, but I think it probably would be maybe helpful to have, if we're every meeting to have.
Yeah, I mean, I was
points in
thinking
each.
I was thinking the same, that because I had a couple of questions more detailed, then I realized, oh, you've got the quarterly report and a lot of it's in there, but I think it would be helpful for discussion points here. So while, in general, the key result is on track, I might say, given the issues we're having with the washroom, and so in terms of some of our priorities of getting some of these top priority items done, we're already halfway through the year and I'm not sure that we're gonna hit them. So maybe like just a mention of some of the things to keep in mind, and I would say, on us, so we had in April that our board key messages. We said by April, we developed key messages for us in terms of our communications, and we're not on track on that because it's July. So there were just a couple of things. So maybe just thinking through, it doesn't have to be all good. It could just be like a key point to make sure that we're aware of.
Okay.
Cause this could be a good, like, one pager, like a history too. Go back and say, oh, and in June, we talked about this, or we noted that, and yeah.
because I didn't find this helpful, but the quarterly one, I found very helpful.
Yeah,
And I couldn't quite see that, but they didn't quite agree to it with each other. And, so either we don't need this monthly, we only need a quarterly report, or we need.
We need more, we
need something in here.
something on each
that-
item.
And it's really, it's not so much what's on track, we can assume things are on track, except where you highlight, you might be, you have your at-risk or your waste, and that would be helpful, in which case it would all be yellow and red, or it would be blank. I don't know.
See, yeah. Yes, so essentially then it could be back to looking at each of the items, is that what you're thinking, is going through?
Well,
And again, not to have to
Go
go
through
through
that.
them all, but just maybe on each of like the individual initiatives under the key results.
I would be, my first thought is just do a quarterly report, so it comes up 4 times a year. But you can still somewhere, if you want to bring something like this forward when there's an issue.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
Or
that's good. Like
because it could
the
be,
odor.
but, quarterly by that point be too late.
right, yeah.
Right,
Oh, that's a great idea.
yeah, that is a good
That
idea.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So not fill this with sort of accomplishments that we're proud of, because they're in here, have it more as a trigger.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. This is
For-
where we need to pay attention because we're gonna be off base.
Yeah,
So it's not so much highlights at that point, it would be at risk. Yeah, actually, that's because yellow is, at risk / late.
yeah. So for example, we could say, space improvements and expansion, we could talk about, complaints received regarding the smell.
mhm.
Does that make sense, Jen? I feel like we keep tweaking you, but you,
That's okay. I do think that makes sense. So this would only come to the board when there's a problem. It doesn't have to be included in
That's what I'm.
monthly.
well,
board
there's always,
package
maybe not a problem, but, where we haven't
or
made
just
as much
a
progress.
discussion.
So if you think about your CEO report, which is lovely and has a lot of great information, and good things, this might, yes, this would be the areas of, points of discussion or
Concerns,
key concerns. And yeah, and it's under each of the buckets because, we should be aligned. That's just how we make sure we're staying focused on the priorities, but, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like
That
that
would be
idea.
yeah, great idea.
Okay, so can we look at the actual quarterly report?
that comes up, really doesn't.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
You're just.
Oh, I see.
it's just
Okay.
an item, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
So. F2 or?
Yeah, community hub, so. I think you've already given us an update on Martha, did you?
But,
Yeah,
yeah,
have you seen it?
the final report.
Yeah,
Yes, we met again, actually, yesterday. Just to go, there were a couple of outstanding comments, they weren't from me. But I have seen the final report, and we're just waiting for the councils to confirm that the 16th is a go. The report's ready, I would say.
And it's not public yet, though.
Not yet.
Okay.
So you really can't tell us more than that, unless you're going to Shamrock. It's confidential to the committee at this point.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Okay. Then the Youth Climate Action Fund?
So we haven't announced the second round of, people who were awarded with funding just yet. I think we were going to release it early June. The project's still on track though. I think we met maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't have too much more to report, but I would say that a lot of the legwork is already done. So the project's sort of coming to a close in a sense, or the piece that I'm involved in.
You know, I know that there was at least 2 years that it covered, 2 years of grants. Does it keep going, or it's just these 2 years? The Bloomberg Fund was the 2?
Yeah, I don't believe they haven't even approached council yet to say, oh, phase 3, and I don't think that's part of it either.
How many phases?
Yeah.
Years or whatever.
Yeah, to my knowledge, it was just if the 2.
Just looking for my. Okay. And the space utilization study, the draft RFP, I've got that open here, I just can't find it, but I do have the things I need to say.
I can say maybe a little introduction to what has happened since the last board meeting. Because a lot of the legwork on this RFP happened in a very short period of time, right before the board meeting.
I felt that way too.
And I apologize. But I was able to meet with the manager of purchasing to actually go through, and she had provided me with sample RFPs, which I had canvassed Ontario Public Libraries, and I had only been provided with the one from Hamilton Public Library from 2019, and so I made significant changes based on some of the other RFPs that she had provided me with, and then additional advice in general, acknowledging that I don't have extensive experience writing RFPs. And then just sort of the general municipal standards and practices and language, and oh, you can't actually touch that part. Oh, I didn't know that. And so that was part of the discussion that she and I had. And she's also happy to look at, she hasn't actually seen this version of the RFP, but she, if the board would also like her to come to another meeting, she said she'd be happy to kind of walk us through some of this, but I think it's coming along nicely. I know there are questions. I think I'm prepared to answer most of them, but
Do you want to start? I just wanted to say one thing.
Yep.
And I'm sure you probably noticed this. We changed the title, and I think, and it's not a bad thing, we've kind of changed the scope from a purely more space utilization study to something bigger that will probably serve us much better than what we were planning, but it wasn't sort of the way we started off. And you made a comment yesterday about how in any of our previous work, we didn't have an external consultant prepare a report saying we needed more space.
well, for the gap analysis.
Right.
Because your concern was that there was overlap. Is that what?
No, I was just thinking, like, I had a very defined idea in my head, and it doesn't mean it was right, that we were looking at how we used our current space and that courtyard, and we were going to do some reconfiguration. But now it's written in a much, you mentioned one that was out west. It's written much more as a, it's a bigger project, which I just wanted to talk about here, and make sure we were all in agreement that that is what we're looking for.
So
Yeah.
how do you think it's a bigger project?
Is it the future planning part?
Well, even I feel like it's going to bring up the 2022 project, sort of redo it and be something that we would end up really advocating with council on.
I do have built into this, and this wasn't in the first draft. It's a small section where it'll be, a couple of our studies will be included, as an appendix. And it would include the gap analysis update. It would include the accessibility audit that was done last year of this facility, all of those things. And some of the information I imagine that could come out of this, may be similar to what was identified in
Yeah.
the gap analysis. But I think that it makes sense to move in that direction because with, well, it'll be a newer study, but then to also have a consulting firm behind it, I think will give that document a little more credibility. Not to say that the information isn't, it's great and it's true to the current space. And also, I think even some of the ideas that were included are still very relevant for things that we could have in this space or we should have in.
Yeah,
This
no, I
space.
think it's good. I just wanted to make sure that we're aware that we've kind of, we have shifted it from more of an internal, what can we do differently within this footprint? You know, up to including the courtyard and the parking lot a bit, to a more wholesome, strategic look at what we need moving forward. And that's fine, but we are funding this ourselves. And you mentioned that the purchasing director was assuming we were going to go to council and ask for money, so we're not, because we have,
Well, she had asked a similar question, where's this money coming from and do you need to go to council? And I mean, that is at the board's discretion where you want to take the money from, but my recommendation, not that it's today necessarily, would be not, well, basically to use money out of reserves that the board has authority over. So we do have a reserve fund for feasibility studies.
yeah,
It's that one that has, I think, like $72,000 in it. Whether or not that would be enough for a project with this scope is another question, but we have a few different reserve funds. So there's the open reserve, for instance, that has, it's sitting in our bank account. We have, the board has control over it. So there's a couple of different options, I would say, for funding. The only thing that I'm not clear on, and I kind of talked to Mike a little bit about it this today, but I need to follow up, is whether or not we can actually use our surplus reserve for that. And I don't see why we wouldn't be able to, because it's our money, but also, I think the only difference is, so hypothetically, say we planned this next year and it was actually built into the draft budget. If the 6% wasn't enough, then the money would come out of our surplus reserve unless the board, gave direction to take it out of somewhere else, like to
Right.
balance the budget.
right,
So the only difference would be, we didn't actually budget to use the surplus reserve for that in 2025.
right.
But I don't think that, at the end of the day, I think that the board does have discretion over how that surplus reserve is spent.
There's nothing in the financial agreement that suggests otherwise. It says that.
I want to revisit it, but I don't think so, based on,
There's nothing that says
memory?
how the surpluses are to be used. It just says that we
But we have
are
discretion
liable,
for it.
we have discretion for it.
Yeah.
So,
It does.
yeah.
My only concern is the budgets that I've seen, at some point they went in the red. And that we needed the money to balance it. So I'm wondering, are we taking money, and when do we go in the red if we take this money for this project?
But that was my point with Mike, which is that we expected in 2024, we expected to have to draw down that reserve by 40,000. And we didn't, we ended up with the 40,000. Was it 40?
We
I
had
think it's
we
40.
had a surplus.
Yeah, so that's why I'm like, why is it? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just not clear, like, there's, yeah,
Like that could be a mat leave or vacant
Exactly.
position, so we should be able to explain that.
well,
I mean, you should be able to explain
Yeah.
that to us if
Yes.
you don't understand it, and
Yes.
I don't understand it.
Yeah, which I think is part of that
Yeah,
conversation
that
we're having,
conversation.
saying we need to understand.
cause we were
Like,
over
your
in
detail.
salaries by 10,000,
Where-
but we were under,
Another thing.
still under significantly, and, is that gonna happen this year?
Well,
That's what I don't know.
Yeah, and again, back to what happened with the town in terms of the 2024 report is, I think some of it is delayed reporting. So we think, we think we are going to need the money, and then the next quarter, we realize that, oh, no, we didn't, more money came wherever the funding happened, or maybe the federal grant landed later and it wasn't recognized until later. So some of these just reporting practices have left us unsure about that and left us with surpluses. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the first thing is to make sure is to relook at that 5-year plan to say, are we still gonna be?
Well, and this year, we are, when we did this budget, in March, we, have a transfer from the surplus reserve fund of 140,000. Now, I'm questioning whether that's going to happen. If we continue in the pattern where we have been, where, we're under, we may not be pulling some of that out. Anyway, it's all very complicated, but I want to go back to this space study, and I'm wondering if there's any,
Is there a way of positioning it so that we can have the internal design, which was where we started, and then added on a B for the external expansion? And so then the decision is based on cost. So in other words, do we have enough in the budget to cover both aspects? Because I'd like to see us moving towards our future of new. Good for you.
sorry, people, there was no time to warn.
Can you be
It was-
It's got a fast arm.
Sorry,
Wow.
yeah.
Anyway, so that we can make sure we've got the budget within our own power. And still maybe accomplish towards our next steps.
I'm wondering if it's a bigger project and if there's any strategic issues, like, do we need to, we don't need to, but should we be consulting? We were consulting with the purchasing person, but this is a big, like, an internal space study has originally, in my head anyway, it was, we're just doing our own due diligence, and this is a bit bigger, and it's good, but do we need to do any reach outs to talk about it, or do we just wanna, we have the money, do we just wanna go forward?
I feel like, just thinking through all the conversations we've had about this, the problem we're trying to solve is making sure that we're serving this growing community.
Yeah.
And we already are tight for space in the space
Right.
that we have. The next step says, okay, well, what can we do in the next 5 years?
Yeah.
And putting a new building in place, highly unlikely in the
Right.
next 5 years. So we're squeezed. So we're kind of back to how do we, deliver services for our already overcrowded, and in the report, rooms that are overbooked, or, where space. So the decision for this and more immediate and spending the money now on was twofold. One is, how do we find a solution that we can address within the next 1 to 2 years, which essentially says our existing space. And the other is, and I think you had mentioned this right at the beginning, is financial responsibility says, have you used all of the space you have
Yeah.
to the best of its ability? And we don't have that answer.
No,
So the way I look at it is, this should be about current space. How do we optimize the current space for what we have? And I would say the next 2 years of population change. We don't even know what those forecasts are because they've changed, because it's not as high as people thought anymore. However, we still need more space. I think that, and then now, if we start getting into more about like a full stakeholder, what's all the community, what are all our users want, we're now into the next strategic plan. Right, that's part of, I think, stakeholder information for the next strategic plan, which I believe we're not starting until next year. So maybe it's a timing, but if we wanted to combine it.
I just went back to, and I'm sorry,
not sure.
John, like facility needs assessment. I don't know if it's that.
Yeah, I feel like we're back to, I mean, I think originally what we all agreed to was it's about this space and how to make the most of it.
Yeah, so that's exactly.
And that we had the conversation about adding in the potential
Yeah, I think it's
enhancements with
important that
the
they-
other space. But to me, that's kind of as we've been thinking about this here, you know, if you could build on next door, you might prioritize teens and, you know, I don't know, accessible washrooms. But I wouldn't expect a full, here's what you should do with a much bigger renovation at this point, because I feel like we need to do something with the space we have, and we need information, like third-party information, to make that decision on.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm still wondering in terms of, if we're talking about reorganizing internally, will that lend itself to the way it will look if we expand too? Or are we gonna have to make everything all change again? So in other words, we're just wasting our money now doing.
See, I mean, personally, I don't think so, because I think it would be another piece of information
Okay,
into that expansion. Here's what we have now, and here's how it looks. And so what is it we're not dealing with here? What can we not hold here that needs to go into a new space? I mean, you're right, but
Do you not feel that this
I think
reads
that-
that way?
Well, it kind of does, but the title throws me. And I know it shouldn't.
Well, I would consider with needs assessment part of that title, because needs assessment are usually that's what you do as a base of the strat plan, and it's a big thing.
Yeah,
And that's how a lot of consultants will read it. And that takes you into, I think I said this last meeting, it takes you into a much more expensive process.
it does.
And I think it sort of preempts the strat planning process, which we're trying to do at a
Yes,
smaller scale.
yes.
So kind of two conflicting ideas going here.
We can change it back. The only reason I actually landed on that specific title for this draft was that out of all of the RFPs I looked at, there was one out west that had a very similar, basically the exact same title, and I felt that the scope of the work was exactly what we were looking for. But that doesn't mean we definitely can change the title. That was just sort of,
The title is just
Why I took it
rubbing
that
me the
way.
wrong way. 'Cause
sorry,
it's not
I'm
a
looking at a
needs
false
assessment.
version. I didn't even know we changed the title, so.
I missed that.
Yeah.
In fact, I read a version yesterday and then I saw it today, I thought, oh, I haven't read the one that came out, this morning?
So I think the question though is, are we comfortable with it being a space utilization study?
With an
Or
eye
do
to
we
the
need to-
future.
With an eye, with some eye, but not the full, here's what we would do with the.
I mean, that would maybe come next. I mean, we don't know, right? And then we can go, I just would feel so much better about it if I feel like I can defend a space utilization study. And, a medium-sized renovation that would maybe come out of that to do some things differently. The full needs assessment, I mean, the MRFA, I mean, I know.
I think there's too many other things that are coming
Yeah.
down the pipe, and
We're not gonna sit and wait for the MRFA.
Yeah.
because-
well, I'm still hoping we're gonna bump out here or bump out there, so that.
Yeah,
well, I think so. Another way to look at it is,
two.
if they come
focuses.
back and say, okay, within the space, the footprint you have, you can at most go to two youth programs of 20 people a day,
Yeah,
et cetera, et cetera. And with that information, we can say, okay, We absolutely, so I think it can serve what you're talking about as well, is to clearly say, within our footprint, we can literally only deliver X. But we
Yeah,
need,
so what we're saying,
extra.
we're proving that we have maximized the current space.
Yeah.
And so therefore, we really need to look
Yeah.
at some additional
Yeah.
space, however you wanna do
Yeah.
it.
and so, yeah, so if they say you can only do X with a reorganized space, then the decision is, do we reorganize, spend the money on all their recommendations? Or now we need to say, okay, we want 3X. So how does that look? And which comes back to how much we spend on this.
Yes.
From that
And the
perspective.
other thing,
Yeah, 100%.
is,
Yeah.
do you want to mention the desk and how you're not going to have order for that?
Yeah.
Again.
Oh, this is the thing. So we do have $60,000 in the budget, capital budget this year to replace the circulation desk. And when we started working on this RFP, it didn't make sense to me to move forward with that project until this project is complete, because you don't want them coming in. You can't touch this area. And it might actually come out in this particular study too, what we should do. They might say, well, why is your circulation area there? It should be, or they'll say, keep it there.
Yeah,
And maybe have some sort of idea for what we could do to better use that space. And to be honest too, when I started revising the RFP for the circulation desk, I started to question whether or not that's the route that we should take.
Rolling?
Well, or even just going through an RFP, because in the past, what happened was we were just getting people, because we had pictures of our circulation area, we were just getting people submitting the exact same thing, but updated. And so the more I sort of spoke with the purchasing manager about all of the different options, you know, we don't necessarily have to put out an RFP for that. You know, there's approved vendors that we could work with that could just, you know, you send them your floor print, they can do some designs, you tell them exactly what you want. And so I think the avenue of getting that replaced, we could take a different route. But yeah, I definitely didn't think it made sense to do that before.
yeah, and I
Yes,
think that's great. That's exactly what, when I think of space utilization, it's how are staff and patrons interacting with our space? Where are the pain points? Where are the opportunities to do something different? You know, is there something we should downsize so we can expand? All that kind of thing. And out of that will come some stuff we can do within 1 to 2 years, and some bigger issues that then, but we'll, you know, and then we'll figure out where we're going next from that in terms of a bigger expansion. But I think this would be good ammunition. So, I mean, I like the content of it. I just think the title's pretty important, and people will put together something that is bigger maybe than.
So one thing to consider then is that we likely will not be spending that $60,000 this year to
Yeah, there you
replace
go.
the desk. And then when I did present the draft budget last year to the board, there was a bit of discussion around the surplus reserve. And when we were putting together the budget, even using the surplus reserve for the projections for the next 3 years, knowing that we would have a deficit, we would still have, based on that estimate, over $200,000 sitting in that reserve. So just kind of gives you a bit of an idea of there would still, it won't be significantly depleted in the next 3 years by simply balancing the budget if we need it.
Yeah.
To top up the
So
6%.
we have the money.
Yeah, so you're sounding very confident about sort of the timeline for us over the next 3 years and the 6%. And I think that.
Yeah.
Part of that gives me comfort of that. It's also knowing that we have new financial people in town who are frankly much more open with us on our status of our funds.
Yeah.
And have a acceptance of the 6% agreement and that we do have freedom that, you know, we're not used to us having.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I really like the space utilization piece. I think that's an important piece.
Mhm.
And it's part of our, support going to council.
Right.
In terms of a new facility, is that we've done the best we can here. And I do think that has to be the focus of this. And then, except I read a previous version and I was okay with it, but I didn't like the needs assessment piece. And it worries me that it feels like it's grown.
Yeah,
And I don't want it to grow, because then I think we risk blindsiding council
yep,
with a bigger project, to which they've already said
no,
and we have had consultant studies relatively recently, certainly when I've been on the board,
The 2019 one?
more recent. I think it was more like 2022, but I gave you all my papers on that.
Yeah, Julia has them now. It was 2019 when Lighthouse Consultants, Stephen Abrams did that one.
Okay, was that
It
2019?
was
Okay.
2019, yeah.
And the
Okay,
accessible
so-
study, the accessibility.
That's the newest.
That's the newest,
Yeah.
And I think that'll be incredibly helpful. I think that, so the needs assessment too, just for clarity, I didn't add needs assessment really like throughout.
Mhm.
A lot of the content still remains pretty true to the draft that came to the board previously. It was mostly, obviously some language has changed. I also revised the evaluation criteria, which we could take a look at.
Yeah, I wanna do that because,
Dates, I got, initially it was just, I was just plugging in, dates. It was to be determined, but then I got more advice from the purchasing manager. Because in my mind, I thought, I was even looking at my calendar to see realistically when we could do things. And I thought it would take longer than, so I guess the standard is to only have, like the bidding process is like 2 weeks. You put it out, and I think I had a month originally.
I'm
So
not
some of
sure I
those
like that
things-
timing. I know that's the way that, see, this is the benefit of closer interaction. It's wonderful that you've made that connection, but I don't necessarily agree that it should be out and,
I will say, when I
2 weeks.
looked at those other RFPs, it was the same. It was
really, so
I think
maybe.
it is the standard. Like most people have their. I don't think it takes consultants long to,
Yeah,
it's expensive for them to submit a proposal, but I think a lot of the work is.
yeah. So I mean, and that, I've never been involved in municipal RFPs, so it's obviously a different animal than maybe I'm used to.
But you don't wanna draw it out too long either, because then
Yeah.
that just makes the whole process. take
So-
longer.
Can I suggest that we take a look at page, the deliverables, which is appendix B? I mean,
That's the project deliverables.
yeah.
Okay.
I think I would like to, I thought that was a really good summary. I wouldn't mind if we're talking about teens, I think we should maybe just call out the children's area.
That,
Because you've called out teens, I mean, it's there, but maybe just mention.
Actually, I thought that specifying teens was really important. 'Cause
Oh, I agree,
Yeah,
but also the little inaccessible,
we look
Oh,
at
the
those
story
three bullet points, that's where the cursor is.
oh, it is
in
there.
here yet.
Okay, but it's not in the, it's not in the deliverables, which is on page 30.
30 is the deliverables for the RFP itself. For the submission, so there's the two, this is where I struggled a bit to figure out which is which, so 30 is the evaluation for choosing the
Awarding
consultant.
the contract.
Okay,
So from, I think it's on page 24 where it says mandatory submission requirements. I'm looking, I don't have the same ones here. So these deliverables are for the actual project. Once we've found someone, right? So keep going down. Then as, wherever it says C, mandatory submission. Using to me. Those are the last ones.
Mandatory technical, mandatory.
See, I'm on page, 30. Like, the problem with all this, these things are made so you've got all the legalese in the middle of the actual work is like 2 pages, but.
Can I just ask a question about that? I assumed the boilerplate you used was the town's boilerplate.
No.
All the legalese stuff, and it's not, you got it from other places? Cause the town should have an RFP structure.
All municipalities, the language is very similar. But yes, this is consistent with,
But you wasn't before, right? And she was like, what are you doing?
well, yeah, and there was even, there was a
Oh, it's
section,
completely different. Okay.
there was a section in the, I can't remember, it was basically like the profile for the town and, that was changed a bit. She's like, you can't touch that. You have to keep it the way that it is.
Mm.
That was one of the comments.
But I think the answer to that is you had your own sort of RFP that had been used here before. So you started with that,
Yes,
not with the towns. And so this connection with Serena, yeah, I think is very useful.
and I will say she hasn't looked at this one
Yeah,
yet.
so maybe instead of just. I'm just wondering if we should take it offline and maybe just have a quick.
I'm wondering, yeah, I was gonna say, I think what's,
The scope though
what the
hasn't
board,
really
what we need
changed.
to agree on
Is
is
the scope,
the scope of the project, the expected deliverables of the actual project.
Yeah.
So what do we expect to see from the consultants? And then a line on the criteria for selecting the consultants. So who,
make sure we're okay, because
right,
she has suggested price is like the biggest, and we're not, maybe it's the biggest, but maybe
yeah, so
we
the
think it's.
criteria for selection and then, yeah.
Yeah.
So is that, yeah, so I feel, and then all the other stuff just is
Let
kind of
her-
over to you and,
Yeah, let that,
procurement to make sure that it's all
all right,
set up properly. So is there a way to facilitate with you?
Well, I'm just wondering if we can't have a chance to actually look at the final version, because I have a feeling that we ended up with looking at different versions, and we're all a little bit
Yeah.
lost in that. Because the timing was so tight, and that's not a criticism, it's just that
Okay.
things are happening at the last minute. And, get a chance to read it over and a better understanding of what are the project deliverables were. I mean, I'm not sure about the consultant deliverables in terms of responding. I don't have that. I don't have feelings about that. That's a boilerplate kind of approach, whatever boilerplate. Use so long as the town is happy with it. So, and so the scope, I really think has to be the space utilization with, as we say, a little bit of, bump out if you have to, because we say team's important, there's no space here, you need to do something about that. Give us some options on that. And it can't be too big. Otherwise, I think we need to engage council in it, whether we can use our own funds or not, we don't want them blindsided.
we don't want them what?
Blindsided for us doing a
Exactly.
project.
Yeah, exactly.
So is it worth our time right now just to look at those deliverables, or are you thinking at the?
I'm thinking of the next meeting, because I'm not sure I've read the right deliverables now.
Yeah,
No,
so we could push this, we're not in a huge rush, it's only 3 weeks. If it takes till the fall to get launched, I mean,
Good. I'm disappointing.
No, I guess in my mind, I was thinking, oh, I have to get this out right away. I
well, we
thought,
do want it out. I mean, I think I think our absolute goal, we had said Q3 would be to have the report back, so that may or may not. We have to be okay with that extended deliverable, but I think by the end of this year.
End of December.
Yeah, I think, for us to make decisions in next year.
okay,
Yeah.
John, you're not sit down, we'll just look at this. Does anybody else want to participate, Joanne?
I would.
Okay,
Sorry, I had to.
no
So what
pressure.
do you want?
Oh, I'm saying we're just gonna do a little, small group, not a committee, just like an hour meeting to look specifically at the pieces of this and make sure we're the three of us, if that's the case, and then bring it back for the July
Okay.
meeting.
Okay. Okay, so I did send you a couple of questions out.
Yeah.
And some of them have come up here. I agree with everything you just said, by the way. There was a question about whether a figure should go into the RFP and a budget figure, and I think probably not, because we may want to know what our figure is,
Yeah,
but we want to see what they come back with.
yeah,
So I don't think you should, but I mean, our consultants don't like that, but, because they don't know what they're aiming at. They don't know how to scale the project to the budget. But we had the same problem. Sorry. My other question was on the source of funds, but I think you've already, helped to address that. I guess we need to have an idea of how much we are going to be budgeting for it. But I think partly because of the information desk question that we have latitude.
Yeah,
we do. In my head, I was thinking 100,000
the,
max. Yeah,
the RFP that I felt, the one from out west that to me aligned really well with exactly what we want to do. Their proposal specified, and it's a public document, a maximum, like any proposal that was over $120,000, I think it was just disqualified. So they sort of set a max budget, but didn't actually specify what the budget
mhm,
is.
mhm. When I say max
You don't have to do
100,
that.
I mean, that's like max. I would hope it would be closer to that one reserve fund that we have, the 70.
Yeah, I was thinking somewhere in 60, 65,
Yeah,
maybe 70,
we'll see.
Well,
But
I
I
think
don't
our figures are public at this point then.
maybe. Oh, sorry.
With me.
No, right, sorry, we shouldn't be talking about this. So we don't know.
Well, we
We
don't,
still don't.
we don't.
Okay, so that has to be that should be part of the recommendation, but that should be not included in the public document. Is that?
Well, the purchase, to me, that's some of the detail the purchasing manager can advise us on. I would just want to make sure we're really aligned on the deliverables, what it is we want to see.
Yeah, I agree, that's the first step.
And then we'll defer to her on should we have a budget, should we, the timeframes, that kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. And that's part of what in my mind is, at which point do we think the project has gotten big enough that we do need to have a meeting with council? Just to inform them, I don't mean council as a formal meeting, I mean maybe talking to our council contacts to say, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
we're doing this. You know, so that they aren't surprised and they can explain it.
That was exactly my thinking too this morning. I think I should be meeting with the mayor. Once I have a better handle on what it is we're doing, and I'm comfortable with, were we doing this to make sure that we're using our space the best way we possibly can, and planning for the future. You know, we still want a significant expansion or another site, but
We don't still want, we still need.
we still need, but we're also
Yeah.
being very responsible governors.
Mhm.
This could also be put. I haven't really given this any critical thought, but this could also be put into the story that goes into the budget book.
Mhm.
And that could be a way to,
Yeah,
not to say that that has to be the first way that council would learn of
Yeah.
the study, but
I'm pretty sure I've actually already mentioned to Paula, we were
Yeah.
having coffee the other day, or last month, I think it was.
oh, good. So that, you
Or
know,
at some point, so I think I've already let her know, or mentioned that we were working towards this.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
So am I now June Porter? Is that who you were with before?
Yeah.
We traded? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe after next meeting.
Yeah.
once we have-
we'll do that.
Yes.
We have a clear, you know, here's what exactly, you know.
And we can all articulate where we're trying to go.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I think I just have one more question then when I'm thinking about the budget work that I'm doing. Do you anticipate this RFP would go out this year?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah,
I'm hoping.
Yes,
why not?
Okay.
just in terms of holding the money for it.
Yeah, and how it fits into, sort of the story that we're telling, which year would it fall into, and then, but if we don't anticipate that it would go out this year, then I would build it into the 2026 draft budget.
I would really like to get it done.
Yeah.
Same here, and also my worry is if we keep having too many surpluses, eventually somebody might ask the question, you know, do you need as much as 6%?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this is all our responsibilities as a public board. And when I go back to, you never go ask for another, MRI machine unless you prove, that, you're fully utilizing your current MRI machine. And I know,
I think if anything though, a majority of our surplus is because of wages, which you can't really plan for some of like a medical leave or, you know, those sorts of things. But the other thing too, would be any capital projects that were deferred, like the circulation desk those few years. And that's common. That happens all of the time with the municipal budget. So I wouldn't say that we're not spending the nice to haves. You know, I think we have over 75% of our budget is wages. So it's not like, you know, we have this gross amount of money for programming that we're not spending. Like we go through that very quickly.
Yeah.
Collections very quickly. So if,
I was surprised though, and because I asked you this question, we were talking about wages and medical leaves, and I said, well, where do they get expensed when somebody is on a medical leave? And it's another pot. So in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe, which is part of the reason I asked, Mike, but in my mind, like, if you know you're always going to have a medical leave of some sort, every year, then it's not 100% accurate to budget for staff at 100% if 5% is going to be charged to some other.
Except you
can't
can't
plan,
guarantee,
no.
but you have to guarantee wages. So I think the danger, it's kind of like,
I know,
it's like, whatever you call it, double booking an airline. I think we have to make sure, you know, fiscally, you have to say, no, we have the money for,
I'm just used to budgets
Yeah.
being a little
yeah.
closer to, if anything, your personnel budget always runs over and you're trying to defend why, not runs under.
Mhm.
But, you know. Anyway,
Okay.
it's all good. All right, so we will find a time before the end of the meeting, since if not, we better move on to. So we will not move forward with that motion. Okay, so organizational excellence. Verbal update, budget timeline.
so this was discussed a bit when Mike was still here, but the town, the goal is to have the town budget passed by December 1st. So the town staff are in a really big time crunch right now. The finance team, Mike explained, have developed an entirely new process, lots of different tools. They've put a lot of work into it. And so the treasurer did ask if I could have the budget a bit earlier, brought to the board a bit earlier, which I think is absolutely doable. So my goal is to have the draft budget to the board for October, which I believe we did that last year too. So that's really I would say the major change at the board level would just be getting your eyes on the budget a little bit earlier than what's indicated, I think, in the multi-year agenda policy. Typically, I think it came in November. But other than that change, and then the change we talked about in terms of having our story featured sort of in the budget book in the same way of other departments, those are the two, I think, major changes that would really affect library and library board.
Oh,
I noticed you board making comments to the council to move towards a zero-based budgeting. I don't know whether it will apply or not, but
Council did pass, they instructed specific departments to build a zero-based budget, so I think the CAOs, I can't remember if it's what it's called in the budget, but it would be, I don't know if it's administrative or this CAO's department. I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it was maybe 3 departments that have to do a zero-based budget, but it doesn't affect us in any way.
Does that, do the core and non-core designations, do we now need to also identify what's core and non-core?
That'll be part of that sort of division sheet that I'm filling out. And that's also the deadline for that is very quickly approaching.
Because I'm thinking that, you know, I believe, I mean, we have to agree on what is core and non, I'm asking the question more. Of these changes to the budget and reporting, what do we have to agree on? So if it's definitions of core and non-core items, just to make sure that at the next board meeting, we have whatever, so that we're not holding up something that needs to be delivered to the town.
Well, I think the definitions are pretty clear, like the core is like what's legally mandated.
Okay.
And then the others, like the nice to haves. So this is where I struggle. Well, I know what the information is, but it's just how it's, being presented, I guess.
Will you be bringing a draft to the board to see it?
I hadn't planned on it, but I definitely think I want board input.
I think that
It might be like there, I don't think there's any any decision that needs to be made, but more so like I would like your eyes on it. I'd probably maybe upload it to SharePoint.
So would this be an agenda item for next meeting?
when do you have to have it?
Yeah, when does it due to town?
I think we can make July, but no other, I didn't even think to bring it to the board because no other department brings their division sheet to council. Like it's, I think more so considered like an operational
Right, but as
staff
a separate,
level.
but as a separate entity where we're responsible. I feel like as a process.
You'd like to
Yeah.
have input?
I would like to, I don't know that, again, I'm asking a question, but just because the town does it a certain way, doesn't mean that because we're under different
Yeah.
acts, that, if this materially changes how we're reporting, how we're looking at at the total assets. Again, it just sort of, I feel like we should, I'm not, like, I don't think that there's gonna be anything that you're gonna suggest that I'm
Yeah.
gonna disagree with. It's more kind of.
None of it will
understanding it.
impact,
So wait a minute, this is for the budget book?
the town's budget book. So any information that will go into this division sheet is public information anyway.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have any direct impact on the funding agreement, the budget itself. It's just how the budget is presented to the public.
Which is
important.
very important. Which is
Yeah.
very, very important that.
And so this is due by.
But it's also pulling from so for instance, 2025 major accomplishments, things like that. Those are,
The only thing that would concern us is the mandatory essential traditional. So I'm not sure that was clear divisions. I mean, the Public Library Act states certain things, but it's quite permissive. So, how are you thinking of presenting at those levels? That would be my curiosity, and thinking it'd be nice to have us look at it. I don't need the rest of it. I don't need mission and major conflict. I think it's all posted on our board for the last 5 years.
Mhm.
Have you done that work?
yes, I don't wanna say it's finalized, but I have started. Plugging information into all of those, and I was going through the legislation as well, just to make sure everything aligned. But yeah,
So would you circulate this to us and ask for our input maybe?
Are there any surprises in that?
I don't think so. It's just a matter of, yeah, like the gray areas and, you know, something like programming. That's not mandatory, but it is a core service of,
It is a core service.
So that would be essential
It's
programming.
essential.
Well, that's, yeah, so that's a question. So is it a must do? Probably not. It's not legislated, it's
Yeah.
not mandatory, but I would say it would be essential.
I think that's where I have it.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's the only thing I would kind of under
Discretionary could be like Thursday evening hours, you could put that in.
discretionary. I see mandatory, essential, and conditional. Oh, it's discretionary, look at that.
Yeah, I mean, so that's, we gotta have something in the nice to do. Right? So I would say, an after hours, use of space by the community would be nice to do, I would think. And then the Thursday.
Say more, something more like the, little free libraries. There's a good positive business case for it, but it's entirely discretional.
Mhm.
And that's the sort of thing I would put down there. Certain, I mean, maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you'd put Thursday evening in the can do?
I wouldn't.
The traditional?
I wouldn't identify hours at all.
Okay. Well, you know where people are gonna go to, wouldn't it be nice to be open Sunday?
But there's also meeting space, so a lot of our community organizations utilize the space. The library doesn't have to be open for those, so that's a nice to have.
I mean, maybe under discretionary, that's where you would say, we're only open 6 days a week here and whatever number of days you're at the museum. So it'd be nice to do, Sunday opening, but we don't have a business case for it.
Be interested to see what the fire people put for discretionary. Nice to do. They're coming in next meeting. So Jen, do you wanna, when you do this, would you mind sending it out to the board and ask just for input, and we'll see if we can.
And I think it's really just on those elements. I don't need to see anything.
No.
5 down.
It's just the 1 to 4, yeah.
Sorry, I'm really not sure what you're referring to.
Just email.
Oh, when was this? Just,
I know, we have to do, I know, like,
This happens really fast this time.
this happened yesterday.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it went out yesterday.
Email the team from Jen.
okay, then I'm just gonna defer from
Thank you very
any
much.
commentary because I need time. To
all right.
absorb.
So, it's supposed to be in when?
Beginning of July.
Okay, so,
So like July 2nd?
Yeah, like soon.
well,
That's their timeline. I'm sure I can say to Monica, we need a little bit
Right,
more
yeah,
time with this.
yeah, the board,
I imagine we're not the only department.
right.
Because it's
Okay,
new.
so if you could get us something out as soon as possible.
They're gonna have time to look through every one
Yeah.
anyway, so they're not gonna deal with everybody at the same time.
Well, and some of the information too is about next year's budget.
Yeah.
And I have it, yeah, anyway.
Okay, so, sewage order issue.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the board aware that we have been getting complaints from both staff, but also members of the public about the overwhelming smell of sewage in specific areas of the library. We notice it the most, obviously in the washrooms, the gallery. I can smell it in here sometimes. And then the back corner of the dungeon is pretty bad. We have submitted tickets before about this issue, but I think it's escalating. And so the town is working on bringing in a contractor to
Just
investigate.
fix it.
Yeah, we don't know what the issue is. It might be a rotting pipe. We don't know for sure. But to be determined, but it has been escalated in terms of, it's been brought to the Joint Health and Safety Committee now. So there are also more senior staff aware of this issue too, that are sort of helping escalate and make sure that it gets addressed. So we're on it, but you may speak to people who may ask about what's happening and why it smells that way.
And didn't we receive a formal?
There was a complaint I was CC'd on that went to directly to the town.
Well, I think encouraging people to go directly to town is the
Yeah.
way to go.
Yeah,
I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah.
yeah. Also, because I did a quick, I've come in here, and smelled it and thought, I'm not gonna bother staff, but I know it's a town. So in the 2018 building conditions report, there was $25,000. So they were supposed to upgrade the plumbing fixtures in the short term. This is 2018, within 1 to 5 years. And there's 25,000 allocated for this in 2021. So if essentially, so there's that, and replacing the domestic cold hot water piping within 15 to 20 years, and there's 20,000. So on their report, I think just let's, be mindful that it's been in their plan. They've budgeted for it, so if they're not, I think, I feel very strongly that if we're not getting action, I mean, I'm glad. But I think if they try to defer and come up with a partial solution, regardless of what we want to do with the building, these things were due years ago,
I think with
and haven't
those,
budgeted for. So I'm not sure how to handle that, but I just feel like I don't think we should accept a deferral of like a proper fixing of the bathrooms, even though we can't expand them, but yeah.
Once it becomes health and safety and becomes an occupational hazard,
Yeah.
Staff could go on strike and say, I'm not working, so town's gonna have to do something.
Mhm.
yeah, hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Yeah, there are a few facilities items, well, even in that report, that they always say that the building condition assessment reports are, how do I say it? They do it every couple of years, so whether or not a lot of I don't think a lot of those items in that report have been addressed.
No, possibly not, but my point
Yeah.
is, I will say now as a resident,
Yeah,
if the town had collected taxes, because they have all these expenses that they say, so, that should be done, and they're not spending them on our municipal services, then there's a challenge. So again, it's just,
yeah,
I understand,
It's an old problem that's still being.
and it's still being handled, but it sort of goes a little more to you've actually got a plan, you said when it should be done, and you put money against it, so.
I don't know if that money was actually budgeted or if
It was an estimate at the time.
it was like,
Could be.
I don't know if it actually made it into,
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Regardless, I was just
Yeah.
pointing out that it's,
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah, this is a perfect
It's there.
example to go in our 1-page overview of an issue that's been,
Yes.
A challenge.
yeah. Okay, so we'll leave that in your capable hands. There's 2 policies that, you are, asking that we, align with the town policies, the salary administration, to more closely align with the compensation admin, and the leaves request to health, wellness, and personal emergency. So you did a nice summary of that. I don't have any. So I guess in the May meeting, you deferred approval.
so the salary administration policy at the last meeting was deferred, and wasn't because the suggested edits I don't think there was any disagreement on that, and most of it, again, the suggested edits were just pulling the town's policy language kind of into ours. But it was Carol's question about WSIB and secondments. And so I do have, just a proposed rewording for that particular section now that I have clarified with the HR manager. And so the wording that's in the policy isn't wrong, but this is just making it a little bit more clear as to who actually pays for the WSIB premiums, and it is the seconding employer that does.
So the secondee, the seconder.
The seconder.
Which is whom?
So it would be us, I guess, if,
So, our person gets seconded to the town and there's an issue, then the library is still responsible.
yeah, we still pay for the premiums, they would report it to us, but the town would be responsible for providing all of the necessary training to work safely in whatever position.
So did the wording change?
Yes,
Which
so,
isn't clear to me what changed.
so this is what I'm proposing.
So the seconding in this case is really kind of like the home employer.
Yes,
So is it always the library that sends somebody out, or do we sometimes accept somebody here?
I guess it could go both ways.
Okay.
I don't think there are many examples of this actually happening in, mostly, well, in public libraries where I've worked, it is where someone will go to the town and fill in a position there for a little bit, but I was never really involved in the contract piece. But regardless, if something like that happens, I would imagine there would be some sort of legal review over the contract.
So Jen, so just clarify, you're going to put new wording into our policies, we're keeping our policies. We're just
Yeah, it's
better
still a board
aligning.
policy, but it's just aligning, so with the salary administration, when it came at the last meeting, it was mostly expanding on the town's process for the market pay equity stuff. Our policy has that in there, it's just not as detailed as the town's, and I think there is actually quite a bit of confusion with staff over it, like I don't think they fully understand that process. I don't see any harm in expanding on it in our policy, I think they should be.
Okay,
It's the same process. There was that part. And then, I just have to refer back to my
The
notes
leave.
here. Cost of living. Probation, so we only do a 3-month probationary period. This actually, I did, wanna have a little bit of discussion around. And the town's is a 6-month. But then there's also the trends in HR where they're saying, well, what's the point of a probationary period? You're making your staff feel like, I think some will say it's like an outdated practice, essentially. But then the flip side of it as an employer is, well, if that person is not working out, you sort of have that built into the contract so that you can terminate the relationship more easily.
I'm more comfortable with the 6-month.
I think if we're generally doing what the town is doing, we should
Yeah,
continue to do that in this
Yeah.
case too.
Yeah, it's hard because, yeah, I think a lot of the HR and payroll policies, to me, it makes sense to align because of how close that relationship is, even though the library CEO is basically HR, but there still is a lot of, it even feeds into payroll too, some of that and onboarding, and so, yeah, it definitely makes it easier from an administrative point of view. But then when I think about staff, there's definitely sometimes policies that I think are a little too corporate, and the reason people, Yeah, and the reason that's a benefit of working for the library sometimes is that, you know, the environment is different and sometimes we're a little more liberal or
You can still be a
forward-thinking
bit
with
more
HR
liberal
policies.
and forward thinking.
In implementation.
Yeah, but you can. Yeah,
I think it, as a parallel is looking at equitable hiring practices.
mhm.
And in ways, for some people, they can't apply for a job that is, especially in a town where it's hard to find someplace to live, is I can't apply for someplace where in 6 months they might decide, you know, I'm no good for whatever reason. So I'm just thinking about what you said though is, but if the term 6 month is the same, the criteria for how you meet that doesn't have to be the same. Is that what you were sort of thinking?
Yeah, like it's there as a protection for the employer, really.
Yeah.
Of course, you don't intend to hire somebody and then before they, the 6 months is up, say, you know, goodbye, unless there was really darn good reason. So it might sound a little onerous, but at the same time, I just feel that the world, we've moved to this. I don't know. I think it's important to have some sort of something to fall back on when there is, not that it happens that often, but we all know.
Yeah, oh,
examples.
yeah, I'm not disagreeing, I'm just thinking if there's a concern about, again,
Are we being?
our, you know, our values and, you know, under the Public Library Act and what we, you know, as an inclusive, equitable organization, how we, you know, how we word that probationary period does not have to be the same as the town. The 6 months, we have 6 months, in terms of what might constitute non-compliance.
But,
and I'm not saying, I'm just saying it, to address the concern about
Well, is there
a
concern?
town.
Like
I
at the same
thought what I
time,
was concerned
I-
about here was
I was just curious to hear other perspectives because, I think if we have a probationary period, which we have one that's built into our policy, 3 months really isn't a lot of time.
right,
I don't think, to learn and evaluate and figure all of that out. So if we are going to have one, I definitely think that 6 months makes more sense. But then there's another perspective where like probationary periods are, like some places don't even have them anymore. So I don't know, I wanted
That's
to,
more a legal question or an ESA question. Isn't it? As opposed, if the town is already doing it, I'd say just follow them.
yeah, let's
Figure
follow
that
them.
out.
And you know, there's a lot of good things that have come out of following the town, like we're now integrated into the pay equity. So if people think, oh, it's harsh, I mean, it's just there as protection. I hear you, maybe Google doesn't do it anymore, or,
well, I was thinking of it more like a culture thing.
yeah,
Um,
but yeah.
But there's
I
no
wouldn't get-
security on the other jobs anyway.
There's no security anywhere, so.
But I would support that it's helpful to have that backup for your protection.
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so now do we need you to bring these back or shall we just direct you to make those changes and?
We didn't approve it last time, so we're just approving it now.
Right, but she hasn't actually changed them. She's just recommending that she changes them.
Yeah, well, if I have the approval to align the policy with the towns, I know exactly
Right,
what to do. The only difference would be that the WSIB language, it's like this isn't in the town's policy. Unless we literally just follow the town's verbiage.
but this was Carol's point.
Yeah.
She wanted that. And I think, you know, she's got a lot of experience in that area, and it does show that we're not just blindly following everything, we're discussing the key points of alignment. So,
And the structure of our policy very much would still look very similar.
so my question is, if we approve the alignment, with the exception of adding in that phrase, do we need to bring them back again? Or are we just approving them now and?
I think we
Yeah,
can approve
okay.
it with the suggested changes.
And just point of clarity, I think what you were saying is the way it's worded, that we're still responsible, is essentially how the law works.
Yeah, all
No
town
decision.
policies are legally vetted. They put them through a lawyer. We don't do that. We don't
Yeah.
have those resources.
Carol, I'm just asking because Carol's
Yeah,
perspective
right.
is that we should not be responsible. But if that's the way it is.
I did clarify, yeah,
That's the way it is, yeah.
with the
Yeah.
HR manager about
Yeah, great.
the WSIB stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, Carol was saying we shouldn't be?
But she was also asking for clarity on.
Yeah, I don't think
Is
she
that
knew for
how?
sure.
Yeah, she didn't know for sure.
So what are we changing then?
We're just making the language more clear.
Okay,
But I can confirm Carol has looked at this proposed wording.
and she's happy with that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so can I have a motion
Um,
that the CEO align the policies with the corresponding town policies? So Joanne and Chris, all in favor? Carried.
Okay.
All right, piano policy.
It's really short,
Yep,
but, this, we've had a couple of issues lately, and I think, the staff are really looking for something they can fall back on when they're doing room bookings. Then I was looking into budget because, all right, who's paying for what? How many times a year do we actually need to get this thing fully serviced versus, yeah, so I spoke to, basically one of the only certified piano technicians, in this area. And he said, you don't have to go and do like you don't have to maintain it a ton throughout the year, but maybe once a year is a good idea. And in terms of tuning, the one recommendation was you don't want different people coming in, or at least allowing, I guess, community groups to pick who they're going to bring in to tune the piano. So just really standardizing, okay, if you're having a concert, you're paying for a room rental, you want to use the piano, we recommend that you get it tuned, and if they want at their own expense, and if they want to get it tuned, then we bring in the same person for them. And then there's just a few other things, staff find it really hard to enforce people putting things on the piano,
Yeah, I was
even though
gonna
there's a
say, people
sign.
forever putting stuff on the bench or on top.
But the staff have taken a quick look at this too. It's pretty brief, but
Do we get it tuned once a year in any case? Like, someone says they wanna use a piano, they're gonna get tuned in October, that can be the once a year that someone else is expending, but what if it's not used for a year and no one tunes it? Do we then tune it?
I would only if it's,
Plan for use,
yes.
fair enough.
So the ACC, we've done 2 concert series now where we've used the piano and it's come out of their budget. We've had it tuned.
Okay, that's really my question.
Yeah.
Cause you can't really let a piano go forever without it being tuned.
Yeah.
okay, so,
I was thinking. Sorry, I just want to make sure it's the same I was reading. Sorry, that we need to say in terms of their tuning, that it's at a time. So where was in terms of the tuning, where am I seeing?
It's the-
It says,
Number 2, entries require the piano
okay,
to be
yeah.
tuned.
May arrange and pay for professional tuning services. So just because you're saying, so they need to go through our person? Okay.
But they pay for it.
Well, then maybe it's we're arranging it. Other than they arrange it.
Yeah, I think more specific about may request, or may arrange, but maybe the sentence needs to read, piano tuning, timing and, service. You can either say to be approved by library staff, because the person might change, I don't know, over time, but, because you also don't want them deciding to book this person in the middle of when we have a class on. I was more thinking about the timing, making sure that when they do it is
Yeah.
okay, but I think we should specify that all tuning.
Yeah, you're saying all sorry.
They arrange tuning with,
Or through the library.
I lost the wording now, but it's with a tuner approved by the library.
Mm.
That's the point. You want to control who tunes it.
Yes.
You want to control, then in which case, the library then books the tuning and then charges the group.
Yeah,
True.
And then they can control the timing, which is your question.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Not sure the best way to word that.
or you could just, yeah, at their own expense, comma, which the library will arrange.
Tuning to be facilitated through the library.
Yeah.
So we're just rewording this part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so. Well, do you need any more direction or are you okay with that? Okay.
I'm good.
All right, so, may I have a mover that we approve this policy, land use policy? Lori, seconded by Joanne, all in favor? Carried. Okay, proposed strategic planning process. The one thing I noticed, which I think I thought I put a thing in there, but, it's, you say there's 4 options, but there's 3, so it's just a typo.
I meant to fix that. Yes,
Okay.
you're right. So I'll speak a little bit to this. I know there are questions. But basically while I was writing this report, I also wanted to incorporate some of the learning outcomes from the first Apple intensive that took place at the beginning of June. So there was an entire session on strategic planning led by OLS. And then there was also, a guest speaker who spoke to finances and, library budgets and sort of how that kind of connects back to the strategic plan. So, some of what's in this report, is what I recently learned, that I felt could be applicable to when we're approaching the development of the new plan. The second part is the recommendation in this report. There's a couple of there's so many different approaches you can take to strategic planning. And I think that the board and the staff did a very comprehensive plan 4 years ago. And so, and I think a lot of the information that's in our current strategic plan remains current. So it's a matter of, is it just an update to the plan this time around or starting completely from scratch? The other piece is determining whether or not it needs to be a 4-year plan. And so my recommendation is to do an update to the existing plan, but not limit it to 4 years. that's not a common practice in public libraries right now. Provided some examples of libraries that have, 4 is the traditional.
Yeah.
So it aligns with the cycle of the board. It's the same with council, and that's the direction that staff are trying to get to right now with the corporate strategic plan. They have to do the 3 years in order to then align, get it all aligned, but their goal is to have a 4-year plan. But then you have somewhere like Kawartha Lakes, and they have multiple branches. I think they have over 10 branches, and theirs is a 2-year plan. Somewhere like Clearview Public Library, very comprehensive plan with a 1-year timestamp. But the plan that stood out to me was Innisfil's, and there isn't a timeline specified. That I don't think that means that it's never updated or that there aren't annual work plans that align and feed back into the strategic plan. But if you actually, I'll click on the link. There is no date. And it's short.
Does it have any wording down at the bottom that says a date somewhere?
Nope.
What a nice way of putting the values, huh? Like they're on almost like a word cloud in a way, but for linear. Yeah, you're right. I just saw that in a list.
And size matters.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
actually, I just realized I'm in
Things like
this.
integrity, equity.
That's me. That wasn't intentional.
What did you say?
I just
Jen?
realized I'm in it. That's me.
Oh, that's you?
Yeah, that was the first. I actually worked with the designer of this flag. It was the first intersex inclusive Pride crosswalk in Canada.
Remember we used to wear masks outside?
That was
So
weird.
they will not, wouldn't they change their pictures? Yeah, like that would be an update.
Yeah. But I think, so I think what really also stands out to me about this is it's action-oriented language.
Yeah,
You know, obviously it looks very beautiful, and it's short. Like I imagine there's longer versions if anyone were to have questions
Yeah.
about, well, how do you consult the community? How do you, those sorts of things? Like I'm not saying that those pieces of the process aren't important.
when was this created? You don't know?
I think 2022, it would have been after I left. I didn't work there when this was done.
So is Ideal Lab their consultant or who's on it?
That's the name of their library,
Oh,
It's an idea lab and.
which is interesting because Cambridge did
Idea
something
Lab.
similar, Idea Exchange, and then they literally just rebranded back to a public library because no one understood what it was.
It's a bit confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a trend when
Yeah.
they.
So
moved
you're
in that direction.
recommending that we go with option 3. I know Carol was in support of that. Are there other comments?
I have a, sorry, I'm just looking at the 3. The only challenge I have with that is understanding how we know when we're doing what we're doing, so measuring. So without stated goals, they don't always have to be growth, but how you know.
wait,
No, we would do that.
Okay, so again,
Yeah.
this is what I'm trying to understand what we're agreeing to. So a strategic plan usually has your actual goals, measurable goals, and a way of measuring them. So I just wanted to be clear what we're agreeing to, because that Innisfil one, what I saw, doesn't have that. So if it's deeper in there, which is fine, it's just let's agree to the components, I guess.
I saw it as, this is the first step. Do we agree we're gonna not rip it all up? We're gonna start from here and revisit.
Okay.
But
Yeah, no.
that's part of there's a third recommendation that there be some people work on it to launch whatever it is, which would include everything that you're speaking about. That was my Okay, what about you, Lori?
No, I think not ripping it up and going with recommendation 3, that works for me. I have more questions in terms of some process
Yeah.
items, because we do have terms of reference for committees, which this doesn't really address in your motion at all. That would give things like purpose, mandate, authority, budget, that kind of thing. And I think that would be useful to see. So that would give us more context. And that would be an ad hoc committee, presumably again. And I wasn't sure where it says the motion refers to completing the phases of the strat plan. I didn't know what that meant. It's not defined. And I thought maybe it meant the same as in a staff recommendation, there's 3 bullets under E. And are those meant to be the phases?
I think that was just, I think the language needs to be revised. That was, taken from the last time around, like a similar report came to the board. Yeah, I think the language just needs to be revised in the recommended motion.
To just say
Or-
that.
So maybe it's to strike it, to strike.
strike the committee.
An ad hoc committee.
An ad hoc committee to,
Maybe develop a proposed process, I guess,
Yeah,
based on recommendations. Remember your 3 options, 3.
yes,
which we would bring back.
yes, yeah.
Option 3 meaning no time frame.
No, meaningful, yeah, there, update the existing strat plan,
Oh,
recommended.
sorry, yes,
that
okay,
piece.
I agree with that.
yeah,
But once a committee, that's kind of how I saw it. And then once a committee is appointed and meets, then we can put together a more detailed plan for this is what
yeah,
we propose we do and when and,
yeah.
um,
And how
Yes.
will we know if we're successful? So that the content that you were referring to, Joanne.
and ideally that should also be
This
for
year.
the budget process too.
Is it?
So this
We want
year
the
we have to
plan.
start consultation. That's in the multi-year policy, the multi-year agenda policy. And I think part of what I included in this report too is we have a lot of data points that we can already reference, not to say that we aren't going to go back into the community and do traditional consultation. But since we did consultation for that plan, we have a lot of other data points that we can reference already.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think, like this year, we still have $1,500 if for strategic planning. So that would be a resource that the committee could tap into if we needed it. But in terms of next year, we might want to look at increasing that budget line if we need it.
Once we have a process that we can.
Yeah.
Determine how much we would need.
Yeah.
So the plan for the plan is we would strike this ad hoc committee, come up with a structure and process, potentially do some consultation.
Mhm.
Additional consultation, reviewing what, as you mentioned, what information we have now, and then next year, depending on what we agree, we would then move forward with, yeah.
So your thinking is just establishing, if you think we're gonna need money for next year's budget.
Yeah.
It should be there. So,
Did we spend a lot of money on the last plan apart from maybe like graphics and that kind of work?
We had quite a big process last time. It was based on a particular methodology. It was sort of with an H in its name, I can't remember.
Hardwood.
Hardwood, thank you very much. And it involved a lot of consultation, but we went out in the community. And we had things like mailbox parties, you know, but I don't know that took a lot of money, but it took a lot of staff time.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I think we started in the fall last time, is because you don't want to be hanging around in the snow doing this January to March, so it started early. So depending on the methodology, you may not need to do anything this fall. But I don't remember it being a whole lot of money.
Right.
Well, they were at the market too in the summertime, so it must have started earlier than the
There
fall.
was a lot of the data points, yeah, and opportunity.
There was Post-it notes and
We
flip
did
charts.
physical posts.
Yeah.
I also think we did electronic ones, because was, but COVID, it would have been COVID time, or tail end of COVID.
We also did focus groups, because I know you came up to Ravenna Hall,
Yes,
so there was multiple gathering of information sites.
but it was all done by staff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So
that's
then,
a lot of staff time.
Yeah, and, yeah,
So I don't think you need to do that kind of process, if you do with number option 3 there, I think you can do a much later.
yeah. So I think the idea of getting this ad hoc committee is probably,
yeah,
so who from here, would be interested in participating?
You know, I'm sucker for these things. And then we should make sure Carolyn
Anne Marie and, well, Sean probably would.
I don't think he'll do it, because he's too busy with
Yeah.
council.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But I don't mind helping if,
Okay.
if you need manpower.
all right,
Womanpower.
maybe what we do is set the times and then, right, so everybody, time that everybody can meet,
yeah, so we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting, okay?
yeah.
And Lori, you wanna be off the hook?
Yes, off the hook. I was really engaged with last.
But we will
Yes.
bring something, to our, maybe not our next meeting, but the one after, we'll bring,
September.
yeah.
Are we having a meeting in August?
We don't have it booked. But,
Wait, there's no regularly scheduled
Yeah.
meeting in August or December. We don't have a special meeting as of now.
right,
I don't know.
We've had kind of a retreat though every year, so
Yeah.
depending on our needs.
Yeah.
You know, might link into the space you like.
it will, for sure,
And so there might be a need just to focus on one item like that.
yeah. Okay,
In August?
Well, that's looking up.
we can have a planning meeting in August?
It would be interesting to use some of the data that comes out of that consultation part of the space utilization study and incorporate it into,
Right, which we will have by the end of the year with any.
Yeah, we won't have that in August. We
No,
won't.
no. What if
but
the,
we could review the tentative process for the plan that the small group has put together. And what was the other thing we were gonna meet on, you and I? And Jen, the,
RFP,
yes, the RFP. Well, that will be out by then, yeah. Well,
So are we suggesting a time in August?
not necessarily, are
it
we?
depends.
Let's just see where we're at.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's too early.
Okay, so where am I on my agenda?
It's just if we needed some additional time to work out some of these things.
Gotcha.
All right, so we've got the motion, which is that we adopt option 3 and move forward with an ad hoc committee consisting of Julia, Joanne, and Chris. We will invite Carol and Anne Marie if they're interested. So can I have a mover for that? Joanne, seconded by Chris, all in favor? Okay, carried. All right, quarterly reporting template. I'm just checking for time. So this, we started to talk about that. The overview of the, but then this is the actual,
I still want to fiddle with graphics, but I don't. I just
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah,
put it and got it in here.
so I guess this is twofold. One is the format and the content, and the other is, I mean, it's the actual report, but there's also, it's also open for comment on the
yeah,
sure of it.
I really love the graphs. I'm interested, you mentioned in your report that you're putting in a new counter.
Elisa's investigating a new, more accurate
That'd be great.
counter. I think it actually has a camera, like it can tell. Anyway, other libraries have used the system too, but it'll definitely be a lot more accurate. The gallery visits is tough, mostly because the gallery has its own people counter. And there really is no way of differentiating whether or not somebody's just attending a program or if they're actually going in to look at the artwork or to attend
Exercise class.
it's a little bit tough. The way this is presented too, obviously it looks like a museum. There's obviously a lot less traffic.
Yeah, I don't,
there, but
we didn't, when we looked at it before, we didn't separate out gallery. We're just, this is just the picture of who's coming into Alley Shore versus UHD. I feel that the gallery numbers could be just, or presented separately and I don't know. I'm not sure, because it's also captured in, we have programming happening in there. How many people are in there for the programming, unless we just want to know how many people come to the opening exhibits would be maybe another person, I don't know. I'm not sure. Where's
And we could do spot audits too, right? Like you don't have to try to get a total number. You could come up with okay, how many people came to the opening and I don't know, 10% of.
Yeah, I feel that it muddies the water a bit having the gallery in there personally. I don't know. I mean.
Well, it depends what questions we're trying to answer and how we're gonna use the information. So that, like the numbers in the gallery, what's the purpose of that? Numbers in the library, what's the purpose of that? I've been at some libraries where you go through a turnstile, and so they're obviously counting you as you're going in, and they're counting you as you walk out. So there's different ways of collecting the information, and it could be done by area, but it depends on what we want to do with it.
Well, why don't you just made me think of something, Chris. Why don't we just say we're gonna choose to put in gallery the number of people that attended the monthly openings? And that will be that number. And then we can just make an asterisk and all other, just acknowledge that in the Ellie Shore number, there will be people who come in for art, but it can't be pulled out.
Well, I think that is two different, so that I wouldn't put them on the same chart. So this is literally, the overview of who's coming into Ellie Shore, who's coming into CHD, which is really important because as we keep talking about how many people we're hosting for different things.
Yeah.
And the gallery information,
Should be separate.
To know. I think that is helpful.
Maybe have it separate then and just have it. Yeah. Just have a separate chart that said, this is how many people attended the opening, or ask the Arts Council, how do they know? Or what would they like to see reported?
Well, you even wonder, like, if there's nobody showing up for monthly thing, opening, do you even need to have it? Like, it's a reception, right? So.
Can you turn that counter on and off? It's a counter specifically for the gallery, right?
yeah,
Can you turn it off when it's a programming event as opposed to a kind
Oh,
of
that's
just people
nice.
randomly going, because it's a programming that really muddies the waters, right?
Yeah.
let's see, Franz, do you know the answer to that question? Off the top of your head, did you hear that?
No, sorry, I don't. That might be a question for Lisa, though. She
Okay.
might know. Yeah.
Thanks. I don't know the answer to that right now.
But that's a great point to understand, because it is a gallery, so understanding how many people are going in there at any time, other than for programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally for use as a gallery.
They're going,
Yeah.
they're walking through, like, oh, look at that, and they walk, So it's a gap, it's programming stuff we wanna try and.
Pull out that, and then everything else is
Yeah.
obviously gallery.
Okay. It'll be the art openings, but also the ACC events that are in there.
Hmm, yeah.
And
that would be
and
great.
also there's people coming in, you know, I know people that bring their guests up here as an outing on, particularly on a rainy day, if we have a gallery here, you could see that.
I wondered about the hot days that we just had too, did
Yeah.
anybody come in for cooling?
Okay.
And they discover we don't have a water fountain.
Actually, there should be one.
Is there
Yes.
any comments on the, empowering services?
Oh, can I just, before you get
Yeah.
into this
Yeah.
quarterly reporting stuff, I think it's excellent, by the way. And I think we should be presenting it to our council contacts on a quarterly basis. So it'd be another thing where you automatically meet with them and say, here, this is the latest.
You mean the whole quarterly report?
Yes, well, it's all
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could, send it with the minutes,
to council.
yes,
Yes,
to be included in the agenda
I
package.
think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we still have a tiny bit more work to do
Yeah.
on organizational excellence. But,
But yeah.
it was interesting when I came in to see you the other day, or I guess it was just yesterday. When I came in, I parked beside somebody in the, who was sitting there doing his iPad, and when I came out, like an hour and a half later, same guy, the guy was still sitting there, so.
He's
So
there
they
every
do,
day.
if,
Every day.
so he has no Wi-Fi at home, and he comes here and uses our Wi-Fi. It was fine. It just
Yeah,
was very pleasant. I said good morning and nice day, and yeah. I just,
Well,
I
and
knew
for-
that we had people that did that. I didn't,
I'd
yeah.
love to know how many people are sitting in the cars having meetings.
yeah.
Again, I mean, I think about when I go to my cottage and I sit outside, McDonald's because
Yeah.
I don't have a meeting because I don't have Wi-Fi. And that sometimes if they're, you know,
Yeah.
anyway, no.
The police have been here a lot lately. I've seen them like 3 times.
Sometimes they just
Hang
are like,
out?
yeah,
Okay.
I've seen paramedics too. I think it's,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're in between or what they're doing, but it's not necessarily that they're here because there's an
Okay.
incident.
Yeah, because one day I drove by and I'm like, should I go in? Yeah.
Cool.
Coming to cool.
Well, it is, yeah, and use the washroom, the paramedics do that, yeah.
Under awareness, I wondered, so media mentions and articles. Could we also include some of our advocacy, letters, like, the one we have on the letter I'm sending to MPP?
I think that
On,
might be under organizational excellence.
well, maybe,
or-
okay.
Yeah,
But it's like, under organizational excellence, right now, we just have incident reports, right?
yeah, that's a good point.
Not quite sure what social media reach means. Is that stuff that
Clicks?
we send out? Is it number of subscribers?
It's the
Clicks?
people who, no, it's the actual people who have, so if you have a post and it goes out or somebody shares it, or it's the people who have actually,
Actually
it's been
engaging with
in
it.
their feed, our information has been in their feed, so it's actual number of people who have potentially seen our content.
So we should have a definition on this
Yeah,
page.
so maybe,
Yeah.
yeah, so the reach doesn't actually say that to me, though. I think it's a really good data.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a word reach, use me.
Yeah, it's not
Reaching.
just our followers, because it's, yeah, I mean, essentially, you never know if someone might be following us, but then they like it, and then it appears in their friend's feed. So, and it's, yeah.
Thank you, Madam Marketing.
I counted more than 4 media mentions.
In Q1?
I think, oh, maybe I included last month's, sorry, yeah, never mind.
April, May, June, that's cute.
How do you keep?
Well, I thought there had been more, and so I just went through the CEO
Oh,
reports.
okay.
You're right, I didn't, this
Okay.
is just Q1. Okay.
So what else would we use for organizational excellence?
So we had, well, yeah, I wondered too,
Satisfaction?
I could put any like health and safety related highlights in here, but I think, on this page, we talked about, employee satisfaction,
Mhm.
which I haven't done a survey. Like I didn't have some of this data to incorporate at this time. Might actually be,
Yeah, I think that was. Um. Yeah, essentially, it's about, are we, it could just be a, if you go back to the items that, the routines, so. We could, it could be financial reports and audits, and it could just be literally like the 2024 audit completed. Whether we have the reports have been received, yeah, again, on a quarter, like, this is the kind of thing that tends to be more annual.
Okay.
But if there's something that we think, we should be checking in on a quarterly basis, I don't know.
And we have to be clear, this is just about data points. This isn't about other stuff that, like,
This isn't about this isn't narrative. It's
Exactly.
data.
Yeah.
I could put a high level where we're at with the budget.
yeah, or something else on the other page that tweaked my thinking.
This page?
The one we just came from. Yes, that one. So participation with town and community. So you do a lot of stuff with the town, for example.
Today, we met with the,
Yeah, are you on the
Deputy?
committees you sit on, that sort of thing.
There may be certain quarters too for the spotlight where I might, depending, like, it depends what happens, where there might be town library collaboration, might be a spotlight at some point. But I'll just make sure that it's not redundant if that's the.
So that's a good point. So it could just be, town and community participation, and you could list actual activities or, 3 meetings, I don't know.
Yeah, or do we go to the farmer's market in the summer? I mean, it's not gonna be in Q1, but, it could be.
well, that wouldn't be, that would be under community hubs probably,
I don't know, because it was that,
or.
It's about- participation with town and community events, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so,
Well, and, me going to,
yeah,
I got number 6 under Q1. I was there in January and 1 in Q2.
Those aren't incident reports.
No.
No, sure, yes, yeah.
Participation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea, actually, listing. Probably, yeah, listing
Okay.
all those points. It is, yeah.
Well, and it staffs it on probably tons of different groups around town.
Yep.
I think that's a big one. That shows our connectivity with the town.
I think that's really important.
The town
Yeah.
and the entity and community as a separate.
And even, your collaboration with the purchasing manager, like that's,
Well, and the different committees, like the multi-use facility, the fact that, we lobbied for that, but
Yeah.
it did finally come to fruition, which was, from our perspective, a success.
I think I mentioned some of that in. I think I have what I need though. I
okay, so
I can come up with something.
okay. I did want to say, I feel like that the narrative is redundant because you've got everything basically in your CEO report, so I don't like.
Well, I think that's where it comes back to the question of what's reported when and how much.
Well, the fact that, what put into here, what we think that the town should know. And I think your CEO service thing, I don't need that nearly as much as I need this.
Okay, so you're saying as long as she can do it in a reasonably efficient manner, it's kind of giving the highlights. This isn't just for us.
Alone,
This is for the town
yeah,
too,
and the community.
and the community.
Yeah, generally speaking, I leave your report to the very end to read, because I find it interesting and tells you more about operationally what's happening, but it has very little to do with my governance role.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I'm frankly, I don't even sure you need a services report
Okay, so I stand
at the
corrected.
board level.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, in the amount of time that Jen's spending doing the different updates but I do love, and I'm glad you have them in here, is a lot of, the images and the community comments and, some of the spotlight pieces I think are important.
I think that's-
Eventually I'll make this look better. And when I look at that, I'm like, but.
I think it's great. What do you?
So this is our report,
Photos.
and are we suggesting that her service report, like, how much time do you spend doing that for?
It definitely is collaborative, like the staff help pull together some of the sections, but. Yeah, then there's, like, it does take a lot of time.
Okay, well, so are you suggesting, Lori, maybe we go to this on a quarterly basis and she could eliminate her?
Yeah.
I'm wondering though, if the service report is a good summary for you, so that you know what's been accomplished over the month or the year, like maybe you could use something compiled an annual report just for yourself.
That is what I use them for.
So
But-
that we don't need to see it, but it still might be
You
useful.
don't have to do it on a monthly basis, and just do it maybe in line with the.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I
then
think that makes sense.
and then the focus of your report really is the action plan, the key items that we need to spend time making sure that issues are resolved.
And you actually put a lot of this on your website anyway, so there'd be like 3 places it's going, right? Like you're posting your events, and highlights, and then you've been doing it for us. So.
Yeah, I think that'll save a lot of time. I think.
Okay.
Really is great.
Okay, well, that's good.
Like, yeah.
How are you feeling about that? Okay. Yeah, I mean, if there's other things, feel free to let us know, but, okay, I'm glad, all right. So,
You
with,
put a ton of work into this. I just want to
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
yeah, it's very good.
It is good. Thank you, Joanne.
Yeah.
Very happy. I'm very happy we're getting to a point.
We're
where
getting.
Efficient.
Yeah,
Not spending more time than you should, telling us.
what we need to know.
And then,
when
to your
we
point,
need to know. Okay,
Lori, that we're focused on what we need to govern, the governance. Yeah.
That was a goal that we had raised when we first came on the board.
How well are you
Where we
doing?
are. Well, and also what kind of reports we want.
Yeah.
So this has taken
It's
3 years, 4 years to get here. But at least,
Pretty good things.
well, we're comfortable. I don't know about the next board, but
okay, so, we don't have a motion for that. Was a discussion, a verbal update on the board assembly. We have a report. I don't know if we need to
I'll just do,
just give.
yeah, Marie shared her notes and I said that I'd be happy to do the update. So it really looks like a lot of this information I at least was already aware of, but they're on the OLS website. There are a lot of examples of MOUs. It's a really big topic in library. It's constantly on the listserv. Ours is on there. They've updated their Trillium policies. I think they're still sort of in the process of doing that, but there are on the OLS website sample policies, which I frequently do reference. I don't think the AI policy is on there yet, but it says that there will be a virtual conference for board members that the OLS will be hosting the evening of November 20th. An email will be coming out in a few weeks. I haven't seen anything just yet, but I'll keep my eye out, and I can circulate that to the rest of the board unless Marie gets that information too. I imagine she'll share it. The fall board assembly will be in October, November. The data for the annual survey of public libraries should be published in July. So Marie has a comment here about using that information to compare, I guess, to do benchmarking. To compare to neighboring libraries of the same size, especially feeding into sort
Wait,
of,
is that the data that we filled out last November,
That's 2020.
not last, wait,
2024 data?
last fall?
wait, statistics to be published July 2025. No, that'd be this year's, I would think.
It'll be 2024.
2024,
Have
yeah.
they
Yes.
posted that?
Based on the survey.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, there's a note that in case you didn't know, the data goes back to 1999 and is all publicly available. There was quite a bit of discussion on, there were many library board representatives at the meeting that indicated they're also outgrowing their buildings. Which after going to that conference last week also doesn't surprise me anymore. There have been a lot of really, there's a lot of new builds. More than I actually thought. But Marie noted that we could get, I could reach out to OLS to get sample master plans from other libraries on here, should we need them. She also noted that some who have worked on similar projects, sort of like the space utilization, or expansion, it's typically architects that respond to the RFP, and then they sometimes will hire a library consultant to their team. I actually didn't know that until the conference. So that's in here. There was a board member from Dundalk that talked about satisfaction with their new build. I didn't realize there was a new build in Dundalk.
Did I? But boy, was it overdue.
So that's something I'm kind of looking forward to. There was a board member that had asked whether or not they had collected email addresses for a raffle and asked if they could use those email addresses to share or to add to the library's newsletter, and the answer was no. It violates castle legislation. I don't think that's ever come up at this table before. I think that's really kind of the highlights from some of her notes. But it seems like they went over a lot of information at that meeting.
Well, thank you, Marie, through you, Jennifer. Appreciate her doing that. Okay, then we have the letter. So do you want to give the context?
Yeah,
for us?
and this was a bit of another last minute, but the Ontario Libraries Association has an advocacy committee that has Indigenous representatives, or an Indigenous advisory committee. I don't think that's the actual name of it. But they had shared their recommendation for public libraries to reach out in opposition of Bill 5, and sort of explained that it really aligns with public libraries' mandates and commitment to truth and reconciliation. My understanding is that the legislation, most of it it's related to fast tracking development and pipelines. So it would have a very negative impact on the environment and sort of contradicts some of the government's sustainability commitments, but also, I guess, from a public library perspective, that's sort of one of our core values. But I think the more important piece is that Indigenous communities were not consulted before this legislation was.
They tried, they were lobbying for it, but they were ignored. And I mean, I already had put in my own personal disagreement with it before they had taken it and approved it. He was just ignoring everything. He wanted it through, and that was it.
He being
Ford. It's Bill 5.
So we're talking about our provincial bill.
Mhm.
I was thinking it was C5.
No, it's the
Gotcha.
provincial.
But it's very much, like, I kind of struggled with this at first from the opposite perspective, because I'm very much a supporter of, what Carney's trying to do with our economy. So, I mean, these things are so complicated. I mean, there's so many things that contradict with one another, and
Well,
anyway,
development
I
and
got around
environmental-
it. And we have a letter, and I'm hoping, I feel comfortable signing it.
I just don't think it's gonna go anywhere, but.
But we're advocating, right,
Pessimistic.
for the things that we stand up for, so.
Yeah.
as a board. So the
Yeah.
letter would be on behalf of the board, even though it's signed by the board chair.
I did have a question about some of the wording though, just really one word.
Okay.
So if you look at the letter itself. And I think
We looked at the most recent one, right?
Who knows on that?
Who knows?
Does this look familiar, the dub headings?
I want to know what Carol edited, because I'm not
No,
sure.
I think she might have edited the first one.
I'm not sure, but I don't know. But it's the last paragraph, it says, but you're due to withdraw Bill 5, begin again. I think that's unrealistic. But I could see, urging that you ensure Bill 5 is implemented with open dialogue, et cetera.
Actually, that's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Because I don't think he's gonna withdraw it,
No,
but he could still consult on it. And implement.
yeah.
does we implement a bill? Or is it execute, maybe executed with,
Yeah.
okay, I was not sure what language.
And maybe get rid of with the leadership Ontario needs. I don't think that
Mhm.
works anymore.
When you say sustainability, he's gonna say, but that's what I'm trying to do, so.
Well, I know,
The
because
environmental
there is,
sustainability.
Is
That's what
it
you're talking
environmental?
about. That's what we're saying, you have to be specific about.
I think so,
environmental rather than-
but otherwise he's going after housing and stuff,
Yeah,
mining.
yeah.
Should we get rid of that part?
Um,
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that paragraph now.
Yeah, because it's going to affect us all personally, I mean, that, to me, as humans,
mhm.
we are important too.
yeah, okay, so, can I have a mover that we,
So I think we need to. Oh, where's the older? I was just trying to figure out what we were agreeing to.
the letter being submitted as revised,
It's amended, yeah.
Okay.
as amended, yeah.
Yes, great.
Hello, can I have a mover? Chris, seconded by Joanne. All in favor? Carried. And do recognize that he was, MP Saunderson, you said is one of the ones that voted yes. So it's all right. I mean, I think it's important to highlight the inconsistencies with other important initiatives.
Well, he did reverse his position on the green belt, so there is hope,
Yeah.
not much, but there is.
All right, then your CEO service update. Do we need to, is there anything you wanted to highlight? I'm just conscious of time. We want to hear about Greg Leeds.
I won't take long.
Okay,
I'd be interested in hearing how things are going with, Apple,
Yeah,
and also that conference you went to last week.
so yeah, the first intensive, was good. And it was kind of neat because there were a few people that I actually got to meet in person at the library as place, I think that's what it was called, conference, that were also attending the program or participating in the program. I always felt, well, I still feel like obviously there's a lot I need to learn about finances, but after the finance session, I felt more confident in my knowledge of how library budgets work, I guess. Although they did share some really good resources that I want to reference when I'm doing the draft budget about like what percent of your budget should be spent on collections, or I've never learned that before. So I want to re-reference some of that. We did the first day we also did kind of like a Myers-Briggs, but it's called DISC. So you do a quiz and you learn about your communication style, your leadership style, but then you learn about other people's and sort of how you have to adapt to communicate better or work with different personalities. So that was pretty interesting. I always love doing those exercises, and I hadn't done it in a while. We also had a keynote speaker that talked about coaching, which was kind of interesting because I don't know, I always thought that like I can reflect on when I've been coached in the past, but I've never really thought about how I do that as a leader. So that was good. The conference was really good too. I think one of the keynote speakers was a refugee from Liberia that came in the early 2000s, and he had this idea that he was going to build a library in Liberia. And over 13 years, his idea of what a library is definitely changed, and he was able to secure over $2 million in private funding to build like a learning center is what they refer to it as. And now they're going into phase 2, which is going to be a recreation complex. And so it was talking about how like that is what the library is essentially, which was kind of interesting. And then the message between him and another speaker she was the CEO of the Deseronto Public Library, and I think it's about a population of like 1,000 people near Kingston. And she was talking about a renovation of her library branch. It reminded me so much of Markdale. And actually the acting CEO of Grey Highlands was there too. And we were like, should we go up there and present too? We went through this. But she mapped out and planned her ideal library up until like she's got the finishes for the shelving that she'll one day have like all picked out. And she's divided this plan into multiple phases, and they're at phase 3. And so she got all the way to phase 3 just by getting grant funding, which was pretty incredible. It's been, quite a few years. And I think at this point she knows, okay, I've kind of exhausted my grant funding portion of this massive project. But it was neat to see even some of the concepts that they've designed for, they have this ramp at the back of their library that they call it the ramp to nowhere because it makes absolutely no sense. And they have automatic door openers in the main entrance. And so I guess, I don't know if it was 10 years ago, they spent like $20,000 building this ramp that literally leads to nowhere, and it's at the back of the building. And so we were laughing about that, but she had an entire plan for how that space would be transformed into, outdoor programming space, like a whole green, with pollinator gardens and whatever else. So I think she presented last year too. So this was an update, and she did have an update. So I imagine she'll do another one. But I guess the message between those two presenters was kind of the same, where they were saying, don't wait until you have the funding.
Well, that's what we've been saying.
The other interesting exercise we did was we were given, like, we had our groups and we were given floor plans of 2 elementary school libraries and had to basically come up with innovative ways to transform the space. So that was neat because there were, architects that attended the conference. There were, like, you had a lot of different minds at the table, and it really got you thinking about what's possible without having to do major renovations. One of the architects that presented was talking about all of these, different renovations or new builds that they've worked on, and Meaford and Wasaga Beach were part of the presentation. So it's kind of nice when I grew up there and I know that library. But they were talking about a lot of really intricate details that were involved in the design of those spaces that I don't even think the public necessarily picks up on. So I made some notes about creative things that we could do. Wasaga Beach Public Library, for instance, they had their archive pull a bunch of photos, historical photos of the main end, because, that's a really big part of Wasaga Beach's identity. And these were blown up on acrylic and actually are hanging tastefully on the shelves, the stacks. And then for accessibility, which this came out in our accessibility report, you're supposed to put, whether it's like a yellow circle or some sort of indicator for people who have low vision, to identify if it's glass versus not glass. And typically it's just a yellow line or marker or circle. And I guess Wasaga, instead of doing that, they had these designers design sort of shapes and things that represent elements of their identity, like the water. Another architect was saying for Toronto Public Library, one renovation they did, instead of replacing, because they did a rebrand, so instead of replacing the sign, they actually did a vinyl sticker. Like, it looks good, and it's a massive vinyl sticker that's on the window. And so, if you do an entire new rebrand, obviously it's more cost effective, but it actually looks good. And they had a librarian from Toronto Public Library talk about all these unique programs they have. So one is, so instead of buying new furniture, they actually have a program where they rehabilitate their furniture instead of going and purchasing XYZ from a library vendor. And then they shared another resource where you can find an auction that's within X amount of kilometers from where you live, and that's where they buy. They go to auctions and buy furniture instead of.
I'm just wondering about the time here, sorry.
Yeah.
Is everybody okay to stay another 15 minutes? Okay.
I can wrap it up too. Trying to think what else. Lots of really good ideas. And then obviously it was nice networking with people, and there was a library at Toronto Public Library branch in the hotel, which was kind of surprising. I was coming up. No, it's in the, not the hotel itself. It's part of, I was coming up from the parking, and it's you can enter the hotel. I don't know what you would call it.
I thought this was in Barrie, this one.
No, it was in Toronto.
Oh,
It was at the
okay.
Novo Hotel
Right.
in North York.
Oh, yeah,
But yeah, there's a library branch right there,
nice.
which was kind of neat.
Just one other quick question, not to do with the conference, but to do with the Advancing Public Library Leadership. Who's in your cohort? Are they all CEOs in small libraries, or?
No, I think there are only 3 of us that are CEOs. It's mostly either people who are directors or managers at their library. And then a few that aren't in management yet, but obviously have, Caledon, I think, has 5 people participating.
Wow.
And at all different levels. They have quite a few people.
So part of their succession plan.
Yeah.
That's smart.
And what is the largest library you've got there? Or give me a sense of the libraries that are there.
Trying to think, well, I feel like it's a lot of smaller libraries, actually.
Which is
Um,
interesting, because
yeah.
they're identifying leadership.
Yeah, I don't know why all I keep thinking about is Caledon, because it feels like everybody's from Caledon. Um,
The cohort's 10 people.
no, it's bigger. I think there's 20 of us.
Okay.
But yeah, Grey Highlands is there. Carolyn, where's she? Hanover,
Mm-hmm.
their new library CEO is participating. I'm trying to even think back to my group where they all are.
That's okay. Yeah,
A couple of libraries around Ottawa, like some of those smaller areas, but
Smaller, interesting.
good.
Right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Guelph.
Oh, good.
Yeah, actually, the person that replaced me initially in Grey Highlands, he's doing it. That was kind of funny. But yeah, Guelph is there. There might be someone from Milton too.
Were there any, sorry. Sorry, in the library space, sessions, was there any like single concept you're like, oh my goodness, I've never thought about either like using the library for it or a way of looking, was there, like, do you have any ahas? I mean, interesting, it sounds like there's some interesting ideas.
Yeah.
Like, was there anything like, and maybe not.
Well, it was funny because a lot of, I feel like a lot of the new builds, to me, they all look the same. So I can't say I came out, like, oh, yeah, that would. But I think the aha moment for me was at the very end, the organizers of the conference went up and did a panel, and it was, okay, give us problems and we'll all talk about the random problems in your library. And so someone had brought up e-scooters. And everyone's now they want to bring them into the library, and the woman was like, well, you can't bring your car into the library, so why should you be able to bring in your, but it opened up a larger conversation where they said, they recommended to us to read the Let Them theory, or like something called that. It's a popular book right now.
Yeah.
And, instead of looking at a problem as how are we going to tell them they're not allowed to do it, you kind of change your thinking and, well, what could we do to actually welcome these things in our space? Because they're going to want to bring them in here anyway, and they're expensive. And so it was kind of interesting because all of the other problems moving forward, I feel like people were getting a little more creative about how they were responding to the problem. I don't know, it got me thinking, because I think sometimes I can be really traditional in my.
You're not traditional at all. You're very innovative.
I have ideas, but when it comes to problem solving, sometimes it's the easiest way is to just do it by the book, or, well, I don't know, there's not a lot of time where you actually sit and think about,
Yeah.
is there another way of looking at that? So.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Craig.
Yeah, so they had a second open house. And I went to the first one, and this is a Craigleith.
Yes, there, yeah.
And, so I was invited to attend another meeting a while ago, which I'd already reported on. And then I showed up at this one. They asked me to come a bit early to help with some setup and stuff, which is fine. And, I was introduced as a committee member.
Oh.
Wow, what advances quickly. Happy to have you. Yeah, exactly. And they're actually they've divided Craigleith into, I think it's 7
The zones, yeah.
Yeah, and so they're trying to get 2 people from each zone, and I'm currently the only person from zone 2, so they're delighted to have me. But he introduced me as a committee member, and this is Steve Granger, who's the chair, or whatever to call him. Anyway, so he was encouraging other people to participate, and he said people bring forward their interests, and they want to come. It was originally established really as transportation safety, road stuff and trail stuff. But now we have people coming through with other really interesting ideas like Lori and libraries. Yeah, so I thought that was
that's real progress.
Message in.
It is. Well, and it's pretty interesting. Tim Hendry was there, and so was Ryan. So they're bringing out senior level staff. And he actually did this is the, I can show you, this is their report on the things that they have been working on, came from the town, and what they've done about it.
Quite a bit.
So they've done quite a bit. And so I do see it as the sounding board for Craig Leith.
Yeah.
And,
Was it more positive tone than the one we were at?
well, I think he was a little more organized in what he wanted to talk about. And so there was a little bit more information on accomplishments, but that's partly because the town has been very clarified. what-
Yeah,
what
which
they've
is
been doing
good,
on
'cause it-
behalf of the group.
Yeah.
They've also created a Facebook page, which is hosted by the town.
Okay.
And then all of these things on this particular page, the town is maintaining a sort of a record of what they're doing in relationship to this stuff. So it's a pretty important vehicle for gaining support from Craigly. And there were also 5 councillors there, right? So it was June, Paula, Sean, Alex, and Gail. So the only 2 people there were the mayor and deputy weren't there. So it is getting a lot of attention. So I think it's a
Good.
really good connection to have.
Yeah, that's excellent.
No,
You know,
committee.
all that structure, and we were trying to come at it from the top down, and how to, and you just sort of just
Slithered in.
slithered in. Well, you live there. Yeah, that's great. Good work. Okay, there's just some information here. I don't know if anybody had, any comments they wanted to make. I mean, everybody in the community was shocked to hear about, what was her name?
Oh, Joan.
Joan, yeah.
Joan did it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding.
You didn't
I
know
didn't
that?
know,
Yeah,
no.
it went out on social media. Yeah, that's very sad.
She's been involved in everything.
Everything, driving around in her, and she's the one that bought all that land, around her house, so she didn't want it to be developed over on, 10th line, I think,
don't know.
somewhere there. Anyway, so,
I will just say Saturday, is our big pride event, 11 to 1. We're doing kind of like a dance party. There's gonna be like, cotton candy. We've got a machine.
this Saturday,
Yes, a bubble machine. We're doing it all sort of out front here, so it'll be a big, we've got a bit of a safety plan in place. Hopefully
10
we
to
don't
1?
need 11 to 1.
Okay.
And we did, actually, we were successful, I think I mentioned this earlier, but we were successful, in securing grant funding for that particular program too.
All right,
That's really great.
okay, thank you. Key messages, well, the audited statements.
Mhm.
So they were approved, so now they're final. So
Yep.
we approved our audited statements. How should we I'd like to say something about the space utilization study. We reviewed or should we wait until we've actually done it and include it in July's?
We could say it's developing the RFP for space utilization to optimize the.
Yeah, but I think we have said that before.
Yeah, I want to just
So we
reference.
just need to say we've made progress on it, or there's still a bit of work to do.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe just the final RFP will be reviewed at the next meeting.
Yeah, how about that? We reviewed a draft utilization RFP with the intent to,
Yeah, with the intent to,
whatever we said before.
we shouldn't put any timing in there.
No, but just say,
Final for board approval and project
Yeah.
initiation.
That's a good way of putting it.
yeah, strategic planning, I think we should say we're going with just a few words about, don't need to call it option 3, just an
Beginning.
update.
Beginning.
Yeah, our strategic planning process, building on, currently existing plan.
I could put something in about, budget timeline and aligning.
Oh, yeah,
Okay,
Like I'll put that in town library collaboration, maybe.
yeah.
yeah, that's good. Should we say something about the, action plan template, but, was this the first quarterly
Yes.
report? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Reviewed the
do you want to report and align on
new, I think we should say the new action.
new quarterly?
We've developed a simplified way of reporting on,
Key data elements in achieving the strategic.
in achieving the action plan.
plan.
Yeah. Anything, I don't know if we need to mention the policies and
The new piano policy.
No.
A new piano policy. Greg's been initiated.
No, I didn't really make this last question. It's
Do
already
we-
in there.
do we wanna mention the letter?
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah,
Board advocacy.
yeah,
Um,
I mentioned the town is treating this as a focus group for the
yep,
strat plan, as we attending our next meeting.
yeah. And maybe that Lori's now a member of the Craiglee working group?
Committee, yes, yes. Well, and maybe say, I think that it's, the town is hosting a website, so it's a good source of information on priorities and actions that they're working with. And that the working group is a important sounding board for the town in terms of developments in the Craiglee area.
Yeah, but do we wanna make it specific to the library? Like, how is that relevant to us? Like, I'm just, how do we make that link just a little tighter?
we have board representation.
Yeah, but,
But she's not representing the board there.
No.
You said you're representing as a resident.
well, you can only be a resident to attend, to participate, yeah, so. But I am there as both resident and a library board member, I've been quite clear about that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Who's a resident?
Next, you'll be running it next year. Don't do too good a job. Okay, have you got that?
Yep, I just am debating whether or not it's worth mentioning the odor.
Oh,
What?
Well, yeah, but it's been reported to the town.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking key messages and who's looking at this, but
It's not really like, it's in the, you're gonna put it in the action plan on the one pager, right?
for like health and safety. What do you mean?
maybe CEO updated the board on the,
Work with the town to
working with the town to address
the ongoing,
ongoing issues. Yeah, I think in the key, it's a really important
Okay.
key message to
Okay.
say.
inputs, outputs,
It's a
as we
very-
say in
No,
healthcare.
Yeah.
that you're not ignoring.
Yeah,
And that's,
And if we're working with the town.
Yeah,
It's
and
not-
that is
yeah.
my main,
Message.
yeah,
Mhm. So, yes.
yeah,
I feel like I have no control over it and it makes me
That's why you're working.
feel nervous.
That's an important key message.
yeah, so every time we
Let
get
us
the
know.
opportunity,
You do what you can
yeah.
with the town.
But it also means you've made it public, and so maybe the town will pay more attention.
Okay, so, maybe,
I typically will do a little blurb under empowering services, that either highlights what was in the CEO's report, or I could also, I don't know, I could briefly mention the Apple and that we participated at the, Library Space Conference.
Okay.
Yeah, and the quarterly reporting is also part of that organizational excellence.
all right, so can I have a mover for I've got Chris, seconded by Lori Evan.
Is that to adjourn?
Yes.
No, what's for the key messages?
Oh, no, I thought we were adjourned.
I can second.
Lori seconded that. All in favor for the key messages, carried. Now, may I have a motion for adjournment? Okay.
Almost.
Joanne
Yeah.
and Chris,
Okay.
all in favor, yeah, okay.